Chapter 1381. The three-legged golden crow was indeed the king of the beasts of the 10,000 Beast Mountain. Although the primordial chaos golden dipper and autumn water sword condensed by the Yellow River Formation were not real spiritual treasures, they were definitely above the standard and had reached the peak of level 1 supreme treasures. It was equivalent to a full blow from the entire formation. Unexpectedly, although he did not have any spiritual treasures with him, he had refined his wings and beak to the level of a level 2 supreme treasure. In a situation where the formation diagram had weakened his strength, he was still able to destroy the treasure condensed by the formation diagram with a single strike. Fortunately, he did not have it easy himself. After all, this was a full blow from the Yellow River Formation. It was not just for show. Although he had broken the attack, he had also used up his old strength and had yet to generate new strength. At this moment, Mosquito Dorn's attack came again. Clang! A resonant voice rang out. In the void, an invisible pressure swept across the world like a tide. Then time, space, karma, fate, the Yellow River, autumn water, and the golden crow all came to a standstill. The Bell of Chaos. As part of the origin of a top level 3 supreme treasure, the power of the Bell of Chaos after advancing to a level 2 supreme treasure was amazing, especially since it contained the power of the origin of space. Although it was only a low-grade level 2, even some middle-grade and high-grade second-grade treasures could not compare to it. The only things that did not stop were a flag and a lotus seat. The flag was the Thunderclap flag, and the lotus seat was the Red Lotus of Hellfire. Although the Thunderclap flag did not advance to a level 2 supreme treasure like the Bell of Chaos, it had also reached the peak of the level 1. Coupled with the attack power of the Dutian Thunder, it was no weaker than a level 2 supreme treasure. Rumble. The battle flag swept and fluttered. In an instant, thunderclouds rolled and formed at a speed that was almost visible to the naked eye. A destructive aura collapsed. Buzz. An indescribable aura first locked on to the three-legged golden crow, making it feel as if it was undergoing a tribulation. It could not be avoided and could only face it head-on. Bright silver lightning suddenly appeared and seemed to illuminate the 9 heavens and 10 earths in an instant. The roar seemed to penetrate the formation, and a terrifying beam of light fell. The sound of thunder was so shocking that even the primordial chaos fierce beasts outside the formation seemed to feel a terrifying aura, as if it was a natural enemy. They were all frightened and could not help but slow down their attacks. Boom! The lightning fell so fast that no one could react. Almost as soon as it left the Thunderclap flag, it appeared above the three-legged golden crow in the next second. At that moment, the three-legged golden crow had just broken free from the stillness of the Bell of Chaos and did not have the time to do anything else. It could only close its wings and turn them into a shield in front of itself. The lightning collided with the wings, and a terrifying destructive ripple spread out in all directions with them at the center. Everywhere it passed, the space seemed as if it was being torn apart, and cracks that were like spiderwebs appeared, and they continued for a few kilometers and densely covered the sky. The array diagram trembled even more violently, and cracks appeared all over it, as if it would explode at any moment. The Dutian Thunder was worthy of being the supreme divine ability of Pan-Gu's Chaos World. Even in the myriad heavens, it could be ranked in the top. Following the evolution of the Thunderclap flag, the Dutian Thunder was no weaker than many powerful undying arts. Wow! Caught off guard, the three-legged golden crow was severely injured by the Dutian Thunder. With a muffled groan, he fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. However, his days of suffering were not over yet. Mosquito Doran's 3 moves started with the Bell of Chaos and ended with the Red Lotus of Hellfire. Moreover, Hellfire was really the best way to attack against ferocious beasts. After all, since these ferocious beasts had fierce and evil names, the higher their cultivation, the more karma they would have. The more karma they had, the faster they would die once they were contaminated by the Hellfire. It was just that they usually stayed in dangerous places, so their karma was not obvious. But at this moment, it was detonated by the Red Lotus of Hellfire. It was simply a sure kill move. The Red Lotus of Hellfire spun in the air, just like the three-legged golden crow had transformed into a sea of fire earlier. It burst out with an immeasurable amount of powerful flames, showing a kind of enchanting red color, and condensed into the shadows of lotus flowers. The next moment, the entire yellow river formation, whether it was the yellow sand or the autumn water, seemed to be covered, leaving only the intense and blazing fire and the immeasurable and enchanting sea of lotus flowers. The entire void was illuminated in a bright red color, and the fragrance of the lotus was fragrant. It looked very beautiful, but for most people, it was a nightmare. After all, what cultivators feared the most was being contaminated by karma. Once there was too much karma, it was easy to ignite hellfire. Hellfire used karma as fuel. The stronger the karma, the more terrifying the hellfire formed. It would be fine if one did not have much karma, but if one had enough, even mixed origin cultivators, immortal cultivators, and even deity emperors would be burned to ashes by the hellfire, let alone ordinary people. The hellfire was the most terrifying fire in the world. It was best at burning dharmic powers, souls, bodies, and all kinds of divine powers, secret arts, and true spirits. Once one was contaminated by this fire, they would be doomed eternally. Needless to say, right now, the Red Lotus of Hellfire had transformed into a sea of hellfire. Thousands of red lotus flames and the shadows of fiery red lotus flowers were the size of elephants. They surrounded the three-legged golden crow and spun everywhere. Every single one of them possessed an extremely terrifying power. First, it was the Bell of Chaos. The sound waves not only trapped the three-legged golden crow, but also pierced through its primordial spirit. Space was king, so one could imagine how powerful the attack was. Then it was the Thunder Flag. Du Qian thunderstruck, breaking the golden crow's defenses. Finally, it was the Red Lotus of Hellfire. Therefore, at this moment, the three-legged golden crow was trapped in midair by the Bell of Chaos again, unable to struggle. Du Qian thunder rumbled above its head, and the Red Lotus of Hellfire struck from all directions, penetrating every opening. Its shrill cries were no longer unbearable to the ear, but extremely tragic. The three-legged golden crow's body, which was comparable to a treasure, began to visibly wither. It was as if its flesh, essence, chi, and bone marrow had all been burned dry. The world was balanced. While hellfire was powerful, it was not without its restraints. The simplest was karma. As an all-purpose existence, karma was invincible. Hellfire was fire, and karma was water. Next was willpower. As long as one's willpower was strong enough, as long as one could endure until the hellfire burned away all the hellfire, one would be able to survive the hellfire. The process might be painful, but as long as one could get through it, there would be great benefits. The benefits were immeasurable. It would be of great help to one's willpower. But obviously, the three-legged golden crow did not have such willpower. After all, as beasts, they were strong in their bodies and weak in their primordial spirits. No, in less than an hour, the three-legged golden crow only had time to let out a cry before its body turned to ashes in the flames. It burned into nothingness. Chapter 1382. This three-legged golden crow was at the king of beasts level. Even an ordinary late, immortal realm expert couldn't defeat him. The primordial chaos golden dipper and the origin water sword created by the Nine Bends Yellow River Formation were destroyed by him. If Mosquito Dowran hadn't prepared 3 axes, he wouldn't have been able to trap him, let alone kill him. Unfortunately, man proposes, God disposes. Although the three-legged golden crow was powerful, it had a fatal weakness, which was its negative karma. As a ferocious beast, it wasn't an exaggeration to say that its negative karma was monstrous. More importantly, Mosquito Dowran had the Red Lotus of Fire, a treasure that could restrain him. What about himself? He didn't have merit points, and his primordial spirit was weak. The death of the body and the disappearance of the Tao could be said to be a matter of time and fate. He deserved this calamity. While Mosquito Dowrin was trying his best to kill the three-legged golden crow, more than 10 immortal realm beasts in the Jot Eon Stargate Formation were also attacking the Great Formation crazily. They didn't put all their hopes on the three-legged golden crow, attacking the array diagram crazily. Regardless of whether he could break the array in the shortest time possible, he could at least put more pressure on Taoist 1 and divert more of his energy. This was also indirectly helping the King of Beasts. Apparently, they had achieved their goal. Most of them were at the early stage of Immortal Realm, and only 1 or 2 were at the intermediate stage. However, when more than 10 of them attacked at the same time, it was a big burden to the Jot Eon Stargate Formation. After all, suppressing 3 to 5 early stage of Immortal Realm experts was already a strenuous task. For a time, stars fell like rain, and the sound of explosions resounded without end. The formation diagram was like a cracked porcelain that could collapse at any moment, and the commotion it caused wasn't the slightest bit inferior to the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation at the side. Fortunately, they had the help of the Eternal Tao soldiers this time. Moreover, it didn't need to drive the Timeless Arc, and the Timeless Arc was there to suppress the Formation Eye. Thus, they could barely maintain the situation for a short time. However, the Timeless Arc couldn't exert its full power. Even the Tao soldiers couldn't provide much help. Most importantly, all of this was temporary. If it was dragged on for too long, then there would definitely be unexpected changes. Fortunately, the three-legged golden crow had a lot of negative karma, and the Timeless Arc also had the Red Lotus of Fire. Inside the Yellow River of 9 Bends, Mosquito Dowrin killed the three-legged golden crow, the king of ferocious beasts of the 10,000 Beast Mountain, as fast as he could. The stalemate was broken. At this moment, everything had already been decided. As expected, the following matters were much easier to handle. Mosquito Dowrin was moving the ferocious beasts from the Jot Eon Star Formation to the 9 Bends Yellow River Formation at a steady pace. Although these ferocious beasts were all at the immortal rank, they paled in comparison to the three-legged golden crow. Hence, it was naturally easy to deal with them. The Primal Chaos Bell stopped, the Primal Chaos Golden Chalice swept out, the Origin Water Sword slashed, and the immortal rank Vicious Beast died in no time. This time, Mosquito Dowrin didn't use the Thunderclap flag and the Red Lotus of Fire. The reason was because he needed to spend more time suppressing the Jot Eon Star Formation. On one hand, it was to prevent the formation from being torn, and on the other hand, it was to prevent too many Eternal Tao soldiers from dying. On the other hand, it would be too wasteful to use the Red Lotus of Fire. After all, with the negative karma of these ferocious beasts, once they started burning, there would be no end to it. The bodies of the ferocious beasts were good stuff. Not to mention their flesh, just the parts they refined were all precious treasures. For example, the three-legged golden crow's wings and beak. One at a time, they were disintegrated and killed one by one. Soon, these immortal rank, ferocious beasts followed the three-legged golden crow's footsteps. Moreover, it was getting easier as time went on. As time went by, the last 1 or 2 ferocious beasts were directly destroyed by the Jot Eon Star Formation. Without the immortal rank ferocious beasts, the rest was even easier to deal with. Without the formation, the primordial chaos ferocious beasts were just cannon fodder no matter how many there were. However, with a roll of the formation and a shake of it, the primordial chaos ferocious beasts that were originally fighting with the Tao soldiers were almost all killed. It was like a scavenger. Not long after, they were completely annihilated. Phew, it's finally done. Mosquito Dowrin let out a long sigh of relief. Although everything was under their control this time, it was still a bit risky. If they could not get rid of the three-legged golden crow quickly, and if the other ferocious beasts broke through the Jot Eon Star Formation, it would be hard to say what would happen. Fortune comes from danger. In the end, we won. The World Tree clone did not feel that way. He was currently busy looting the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain, and he had to do his best to take away all the good stuff. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of victory. Well said. Mosquito Dowrin was not a person who liked to be sad. After hearing the world tree clone's words, his eyes also lit up as he looked at the endless flesh and bones in the timeless Arkansas. These were all resources for his advancement. I'll leave the outside to you. When Taoist couldn't wait to say that. Then, he turned into a sea of blood and covered all the corpses, flesh and blood. Then, he became completely silent. When he woke up again, he would definitely have digested all the flesh and blood, and his cultivation level would increase by leaps and bounds, catching up to his original body. Seeing Mosquito Dorn's actions, the World Tree clone was also envious. Not to mention his original body, Mosquito Doran was also about to leave him behind. He also wanted to immediately devour the wood origin, refine the 3,000 Great Tao, and improve the all-wood source and the world source in order to catch up to Mosquito Doran and his original body. However, he also knew that his advancement could not compare to Mosquito Doran's, so he did not care if it took more or less time. The most important thing now was to collect these resources as soon as possible. Although few people came to the 10,000 Beast Mountain, it did not mean that no one came. If someone came out of nowhere, things would still be a little troublesome. Although he was not afraid of trouble, it was better to have less trouble. In order to collect at the fastest speed, the World Tree clone also sent helpers. He did not let the Tao soldiers who had suffered heavy losses return to recuperate. Instead, he ordered them to disperse and assist him in the collection. This way, his speed naturally increased. Compared to doing it himself, he saved more than half of the time and captured the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain in one fell swoop. Good. Indeed, a horse won't get fat without grass at night, and a man won't get rich without a windfall. After plundering the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain, the clone of the World Tree suddenly became excited. The harvest this time was really too great. Resources below the primordial chaos realm were not of much significance to him, so he did not need to mention them. That was because the 10,000 Beast Mountain was a dangerous place at the primordial chaos level, so primordial chaos resources occupied most of them. Among these resources, the beginner, intermediate, and advanced ones occupied more than 70% and only about 20% of the top-notch ones. Even so, all the primordial chaos resources added together were almost half of what Fang Qingshan had before advancing to the ultimate timeless Arkansas. Chapter 1383. Although there were many primordial chaos resources, the World Tree valued the immortal resources more. After all, his body had already advanced to the peak of primordial chaos. After this time, Mosquito Doran would also advance to the peak of primordial chaos, and Timeless Ark would advance to the supremacy level. Therefore, primordial chaos resources were somewhat low-end for them. What they needed now was to accumulate more immortal rank resources. However, because of their cultivation level, they could not go to the immortal danger zone. Although they had Timeless Ark, the immortal danger zone was different from the primordial chaos danger zone. Moreover, there were many people there, and the harvest might not be as much as the 10,000 Beast Mountain. Although the amount of immortal resources this time could not compare to the primordial chaos resources, it was no less than the harvest from the last time. Although he had been chased by hundreds and thousands of primordial chaos and dozens of immortal experts and narrowly escaped death, the harvest was also huge. In the end, those primordial chaos and immortal resources all fell into Fang Qingshan's pocket. It was not that he wanted to monopolize them, but that Jiang Mingwei and Jiang Baowang did not care for those resources. At the same time, they wanted to be on his good side, so they did not take any. In the end, Fang Qingshan only gave a small portion to Yang Mei, and the rest fell into his pocket. Although there were dozens of immortal experts and a late-stage immortal expert, when it came to resources, they really could not compare to the beasts of the 10,000 Beast Mountain. After all, they were all itinerant cultivators and did not have sufficient resources. Otherwise, they would not have risked universal condemnation to rob Fang Qingshan and Jiang Mingwei. For itinerant cultivators, once they had resources, most would use them to cultivate as soon as possible and transform them into their own strength. Only when they were strong could they obtain more resources. If they were to be used as a collection, the gains would not make up for the losses. Therefore, these people did not have much wealth on them. Moreover, because they lived on the edge all year round, in order to prevent accidents from happening and end up supporting the enemy, they might not necessarily have all their wealth. These beasts, on the other hand, had their nests raided. Unfortunately, although the harvest last time was not bad, there was not much left. The reason for this was because they had all been transformed into strength by Feng Qingshan. This time, the reason why the Zhou star formation could trap more than 10 Immortal Realm experts, including those at the middle stage of Immortal Realm, was because of the Zhou star formation. Actually, it was all thanks to the resources from last time. Feng Qingshan used most of it to nurture Eternal Dao soldiers. However, one had to admit that Feng Qingshan had foresight and foresight. Otherwise, the Zhou star map would have been torn apart the moment it came into contact with everyone. These were not what excited the World Tree clone the most this time. It was the origin of the 10,000 Beast Mountain. Yes, plucking feathers from wild geese, the sky is 1 meter high. After the World Tree clone took all the resources, it did not even let the 10,000 Beast Mountain go. His original plan was to move the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain and use it to create a sail unit, like the Blood Sail, the Witch Ship Sail, and so on. Unfortunately, 10,000 Beast Mountain itself was too large, and the most important thing was that it was one with the void. It couldn't be moved, nor could it be moved. So, was there nothing he could do? He was underestimating the World Tree clone too much. With the mentality of not leaving empty-handed, he settled for the next best thing, which was to extract the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain's Dragon Vein origin power. This resource was the essence of the 10,000 Beast Mountain, comparable to high-level immortal resources. Even many Immortal Realm danger zones could not find it. Once he comprehended it, he could comprehend the 10,000 Beast Dao. This was what the World Tree clone needed. At the same time, they had another unexpected reward. That was merit power. Because he extracted the 10,000 Beast Mountain's origin power, although the 10,000 Beast Mountain was not completely destroyed, it was almost there. Even if it could be repaired, without hundreds of thousands of years, it would be useless. Hence, the Great Tao sensed it and bestowed merit. Although this merit was not much, it was like a timely rain for the World Tree clone. Compared to the 10,000 Beast Mountain's origin, it made him feel even more excited and happy. Destroying danger zones had great merit. This actually surprised the World Tree clone because there were basically no records of it. The reason was because very few people did it. The others did not do it, but it was not without reason. Those with low cultivation bases wouldn't be able to do that. After all, not everyone had a trump card like the mutated Eternal Heavenly Vessel. For people with high cultivation, it was not limited to this. Moreover, the world was balanced, and existence was the reason, so they could not act recklessly. Moreover, the World Tree clone did not obtain much merit from destroying the 10,000 Beast Mountain, not to mention other people with higher cultivation. Therefore, this matter did not spread much. After doing this, I'll go to the Corpse battlefield next. After leaving the 10,000 Beast Mountain, the World Tree clone first found a place to digest this time's harvest, while waiting for Mosquito Dowrin to come out of seclusion. At the same time, it was preparing for the next place to attack. This time, the World Tree clone's target was the Corpse battlefield. There were two reasons for this. Firstly, it was naturally because of resources. This Corpse battlefield was also a dangerous place, just like the 10,000 Beast Mountain, between Primordial and Immortal. It was rich in resources, but it was not widely used. It leaned towards the dark element, suitable for people who cultivated the demon and ghost bloodlines, but it was not very good for cultivating Buddhism. The danger was even higher than the 10,000 Beast Mountain, so naturally there were fewer people who went. But this was not worth mentioning in the eyes of the World Tree clone and Mosquito Dowrin. To them, there was only the boundary between resources and non-resources. There was no difference between useful and useless resources, because to them, any resource could be used to improve themselves. Not to mention Mosquito Dowrin, he did not reject anyone. To the World Tree clone, of the 3,000 paths. There was yin and yang, there was good and evil. The difference between this place and the 10,000 Beast Mountain was that this danger zone was not naturally formed. Danger zones were different from natural disasters. Natural disasters were disasters formed by the changes in the laws of the world. But danger zones were different. They were divided into two types. One was when natural disasters stopped and merged with the world, just like the 10,000 Beast Mountain. The other type was man-made, or it could be said that it was formed after birth. It was constantly changing. This Een Corpse battlefield was like this. This was once a battlefield, a place where two large sects, the Een Corpse sect and the Een Spirit sect, fought. Although these two sects could not compare to the Tao Will sect, they were similar to the 5 great families of the merchant chaotic world. At the beginning, they found a very special place here. It was filled with Een Chi. For normal people, they would avoid it, but for the Een Corpse sect and the Een Spirit sect, it was different. This was a treasure land bestowed by the heavens. In order to fight for this place, the two sects fought. Chapter 1384. In the infinite worlds, even though the boundless void was huge, there were quite a number of living beings. This was especially the case after countless eras, where the resources had basically all been divided up. This was also why the god of Poison Marquis and the others discovered the Pan-Gu primal chaos world, but kept it a secret, wanting to take it for themselves. The Een Corpse battlefield, this place of extreme negative energy to other powers, was just that. But to the Een Corpse sect and Een Spirit sect, it was a place that could bring their sects to the next level. The world was bustling for benefits. The world was bustling for benefits. Whether it was for individuals, families, or sects, it was the same. For the sake of profit, anything could happen. However, under normal circumstances, it was relatively restrained. After all, everyone was equal in strength. If they fought, they would be evenly matched. You couldn't take me down, and I couldn't take you down. In the end, they would still have to negotiate. The most important thing was that once they fought, they wouldn't be able to stop even if they wanted to. In order to prevent the sandpiper and clam from fighting and benefiting others, similar powers would only attack once or twice to test the waters. However, this time, it was unknown if someone was adding fuel to the fire, or if they lost their heads and fought with all their might, or if there were other reasons. From fighting for treasures at the beginning to fighting to the end, it was a fight to the death. And in the end, it was indeed a fight to the death. The elites of the two sects were all annihilated in this treasure land. This was originally a place of extreme negative energy. Millions of experts from the two sects fought here and fell. Blood flowed like a river, and corpses were everywhere. After tens of thousands of years of change, countless zombies, skeletons, demons, and other monsters were born. This place had completely turned into a dangerous place. At the beginning, there were many people who came here. After all, most of the Een Spirit sect and Een Corpse sect members died here. Not to mention Primordial Chaos sect members. Even undying beings were everywhere. Not to mention the dangerous place itself. Just the treasures on the bodies of these experts after they died were enough to make people drool. Unfortunately, not long after, this place became an abominable place. The reason for this was because of the degree of danger. One could tell what kind of nature the Een Corpse sect and Een Spirit sect were just by looking at their names. Coupled with the land of extreme negative energy, it was like a tortoise with a mung bean. Therefore, most of the people who died here had turned into zombies and ghosts. Fortunately, too much origin energy had been expended in the process of nurturing the danger zone, so it hadn't advanced to immortal rank. Zombies and Een ghosts weren't as powerful as they were before they died. In the end, danger zones that were formed naturally were evolved by the natural disaster origin. Danger zones that were formed naturally could not evolve into danger zones without the support of a powerful origin energy. Generally, acquired danger zones could only be developed in places like battlefields. However, it was precisely because of the need to nurture the source of danger that the Fallen Spirits sect and Fallen Corpse sect members had to expend a lot of their own resources. Not only did it not have a lot of resources, it was also very dangerous. Therefore, gradually, fewer people came. Now, it was the same as the 10,000 Beast Mountain. Almost no one came. Of course, the most fundamental reason was that the battlefield of the Divine Emperors wasn't here. If a Divine Emperor died here, the result would be completely different. Although everyone didn't come here because of the problem of resources and the danger level. But that didn't mean that the Corp's battlefield had fewer resources. It was just not as much as everyone expected. However, for Mosquito Dowrin and the World Tree clone, it was enough. There was another reason why the World Tree clone chose this place. It was because of another mission this time, the Storm Sword token. Speaking of the Storm Sword token, it had to be mentioned that after destroying the 10,000 Beast Mountain danger zone, the World Tree clone seemed to be even more excited than obtaining the resources of the entire 10,000 Beast Mountain. The reason for this was because the moment the Merit Sword token was added to his body, he suddenly had a sudden impulse. He vaguely sensed the location of the Storm Sword token. Thus, the World Tree clone quickly took advantage of the Merit Sword token's descent. With the help of Heaven and Earth, he let the Thunder Emperor use the Book of Luo River diagram to deduce. Then he obtained a place, which was the Corp's battlefield. The divination showed that if he went there, he might be able to fulfill his wish. Somehow, the World Tree clone knew that as long as he could destroy the Corp's battlefield, he would be able to obtain the Storm Sword token. That way, he would be able to obtain a large amount of resources and obtain the Storm Sword token. How could he not go? Not to mention the World Tree clone and Mosquito Dowrin who were running around in the boundless void. If they met Fong Qingshan, who was quietly staying in the Dao sect, the two of them would probably be in a daze for a while and feel a sense of unfamiliarity. Because at this moment, when they looked at Fong Qingshan, it was like looking at a great scholar who had studied extensively and was brimming with wisdom. Fong Qingshan's gains were really too great. Other than the cultivation methods, he had read most of the books on the first floor of the Dao Palace. Knowledge is power. This was not a lie. In the desolation, the Wu people were the descendants of Pan Gu. They were born with great merits, great luck, and their cultivation was not weak. With the 12 siblings together, they could go anywhere in the world. But what was the result in the end? If not for Fong Qingshan, the final result would probably be the same as before. There would not be a single one left, and they would hide in the North Continent. In the end, even the underworld would be taken away by the Buddhist sect. The reason for this was that they did not have a primordial spirit and only knew how to kill. They did not care about knowledge and cultivation. As the saying goes, a scholar knows everything in the world without going out. Now, Fong Qingshan had this feeling. The infinite worlds, the boundless void, even though it was remote and vast. Ever since its formation, countless eons had passed. Who knew how many secrets had been accumulated? Fong Qingshan did not dare to say that he knew everything, but he had a general understanding of it. Fear came from the unknown, and unsteadiness came from unfamiliarity. After understanding this, Fong Qingshan not only strengthened his foundation, but he could also be fearless, joyless, and worry-free. This was the improvement of his state of mind, although it did not seem to increase one's combat power or cultivation. But it could allow one to stand higher, walk further, and walk more smoothly. The higher one stood, the farther one could see, and the more easily one could choose the path under one's feet and walk the right path. Walking more smoothly was not only because one was rich in knowledge and could deduce many things from one instance, but also because one could seek luck and avoid danger, just like Jiang Mingyue's danger sense. That was not all. Fong Qingshan had also read through many of the cultivation methods and divine abilities on the second floor. He had extracted their essence and removed their impurities, fusing them into the Dao verification mantra heavens. Although it did not raise the grade of the Dao verification mantra heavens to a higher level, its foundation had deepened considerably. It was more suitable for the laws of the universe, and it was easier for it to evolve into an immortal chapter. Chapter 1385. After settling down in the Dao sect, Fong Qingshan had two goals and two expectations. One of them was naturally the Dao Palace. He had seen quite a lot on the first and second floors. Now, he hoped to see more immortal-level cultivation techniques and mystiques so that he could better perfect the all-heavens Tao validation technique in the future. However, the third floor was different from the first and second floors. Even though Elder Zay had opened the door for him, the sect rules were still there. He couldn't be unscrupulous. Although he was the master of the eternal heavenly vessel, he had already made things convenient for him. Furthermore, immortal rank resources were considered a cornerstone even in a faction like the Dao sect. They couldn't be neglected, and their Dao couldn't be passed down easily, unless he continued to reveal that he had obtained the purple title, Emperor-level genius. However, this wasn't for Fang Qingshan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have hidden it from the start. He wouldn't be able to read books, meditate, visit friends, and discuss Tao in peace. Although he couldn't view all the complete immortal-level cultivation techniques. However, cultivation techniques with incomplete chapters and incomplete sentences were not subject to such restrictions. To others, these things were completely useless. However, to Fang Qingshan, these were enough. This was because Fang Qingshan had a sutra depository. The sutra depository had a function of deducing and perfecting techniques. However, the amount of eternal power required was a little large. If coupled with the power of the Book of Luo River Diagram, the difficulty of deducing would be reduced by 30%. With these, he would have an immortal-level cultivation technique. His second goal was to speed up the deduction and perfection of these immortal-level cultivation techniques. Only with a certain number of complete immortal-level cultivation techniques could he build the all-heavens Tao validation technique. At the same time, after perfecting it, he could use these cultivation techniques to exchange for Tao meaning points and see more complete chapters. The other two things he was looking forward to were the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao preaching and the Tao will sex inner disciple selection. The Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao preaching was unnecessary. This was related to the perfection of Fang Qingshan's immortal chapter. It was also what Fang Qingshan valued the most. It was related to Fang Qingshan's immortal level cultivation in the future. As for the selection of the Tao will sex inner core disciples, the reason he attached importance to it was because once he became eminent in this battle, there would be numerous benefits. First of all, if you can enter the top 10 of the inner disciples, you can directly be promoted to a true disciple. As for becoming an inheritor disciple, not only would he be able to obtain the Tao will sex core secret techniques, his status would not be inferior to that of an elder, and he could even compete for the position of sect leader. When he went out, he could also represent the Tao will sect. Anyone would look up to him, and he would also have the Tao will sex providence. Secondly, even if it wasn't for the sake of becoming a true inheritor, as long as one's ranking was good, they would be able to obtain more rewards. They would be able to enter the Scripture Pavilion and the Treasure Pavilion to choose cultivation techniques, divine abilities, spirit treasures, and weapons. They would also be able to enter various grotto heavens and blessed lands to cultivate. As for Fang Qingshan, he was only at the peak primordial chaos. Why did he dare to compete for a successor disciple? His timeless arc could suppress a mid-stage primordial chaos cultivator. The most crucial point was that the inner disciple competition would take place after the Sword Storm Emperor's Tao lecture. After listening to the Sword Storm Emperor's Tao lecture and perfecting the immortal chapter, Fang Qingshan could immediately transcend the immortal tribulation. Once he transcended the immortal tribulation, he would not be afraid even if he reached the late-stage immortal tribulation, let alone the mid-stage immortal tribulation. However, during this period, not only had Fang Qingshan improved, but Yang Mei had also improved. Like Fang Qingshan, he had come from the Pangu chaotic world and understood the situation of the myriad realms very well. Therefore, just like Fang Qingshan, he looked at the collection on the first floor. However, he did not have the opportunity that Fang Qingshan had. Although he did not know if it was because of the providence or some other reason, he still gained a lot after looking at it. After obtaining 2 immortal-grade cultivation techniques and switching cultivation, his combat power was not low among all the intersect disciples. If he was given a little more time, his cultivation and combat power would probably improve by leaps and bounds. If the inner disciple competition was not coming soon, Yang Mei would have already left the Dao sect and traveled the myriad realms. As for Jiang Mingyue, because she had obtained the mermaid's tears and refined a set of spirit medicine with other materials, she had awakened the danger perception constitution again. Her cultivation level had naturally improved as well, instantly advancing from the mid-stage primordial chaos to the peak late-stage primordial chaos. She had almost entered the peak primordial chaos. Of course, this was also because he had a solid foundation and the various treasures he had used in the past had accumulated in his body, which was thick and thin. Apart from them, the other inner sect disciples of the Dao sect had also made progress. After all, the inner disciple selection competition was coming soon. Everyone wanted to fight for the top 10 and advance to become a true disciple. Even if they were not in the top 10, they had to work hard for the rewards. Time flowed like water. In the blink of an eye, nearly 100 years had passed. The Sword Storm Emperor's Dao lecture and the Dao sect's inner disciple competition were coming soon. On this day, two beams of light suddenly flew over from the star-shifting seas Life and Death Island in the Dao sect's intersect encampment. After the light dissipated, two figures appeared. Who else could it be but Taoist One and the World Tree clone? 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye. The two of them were very different from that day. The most obvious change was naturally in their cultivation levels. Mosquito Doran's cultivation level had actually broken through to the immortal realm. In fact, this was very normal. After flattening the 10,000 Beast Mountain and digesting the gains, Mosquito Doran's cultivation level had broken through to the peak primordial chaos. After experiencing the next few perilous places, his cultivation level naturally increased day by day. It was only a matter of time before he reached the 12th stage primordial chaos. In addition, although the places they had chosen were all primordial chaos perilous places, there were many second-level resources. Swallowing one or two second-level cardinal treasures and breaking through to the immortal realm was just a matter of time. As for the David Decay and the immortal Thunder Tribulation, they were not that easy for Mosquito Doran. After all, he had transcended a top-notch Thunder Tribulation, but it was not considered too difficult. The World Tree clone's cultivation level was obviously not comparable to Mosquito Doran's. However, although it had not broken through to the immortal realm, it had reached the 12th stage primordial chaos. It should not be a problem for it to break through to the immortal realm after a period of training. After all, they did not lack resources now. In the past 100 years, the two of them rode the timeless arc and traveled through the boundless void, shuttling through various perilous places. However, their assets had increased by more than 3 to 5 times compared to before. 10,000 Beast Mountain, Corpse Battlefield, Endless Inferno, Frozen Snow Region, and so on, a total of 7 perilous places between the immortal realm and the primordial chaos, had been swept clean by them. As a result, the two of them were considered prominent around the Tao chaotic world. After all, not everyone could destroy a top-notch primordial chaos perilous place, and not everyone could benefit from it. We're finally back. Upon seeing the familiar scene, the two of them looked at each other and smiled. Once I come out of seclusion, I can head to the blessed Source Mountain to listen to the Tao. Mosquito Doran flipped his hand and took out a token. It was none other than the Storm Sword token. Chapter 1386. Just as Mosquito Doran and Fong Qingshan returned to life in Death Island, Fong Qingshan had reached a crucial moment. He was sitting in a secret room, cultivating. He was making his final effort to perfect the framework of the immortal chapter of the All-Heaven Tao verification technique. In these 100 years, Fong Qingshan had only done 2 things. Firstly, reading the history of the All-Heavens had triggered an opportunity. The torrent of history had caused him to break his own limits. After breaking his limits, he was no longer unable to improve. Instead, he had a lot of room for improvement. Therefore, he had been cultivating all these years, hoping to reach the next limit. However, it was very easy to achieve this. He just needed to spend some time. After all, his state of mind and cultivation had already reached the immortal level when he received the eternal blessing. In other words, the volume of the container had already expanded. What he needed to do now was to constantly meditate, devour resources, and cultivate to fill up the volume. The other was naturally to make up for his foundation and knowledge. First, he read most of the books on the first floor of the Tao Palace. Then, he read the various primordial chaos cultivation methods and combat skills on the second floor. This allowed the all-heaven Tao verification techniques primordial chaos chapter to reach its current limit. Finally, it was naturally the immortal cultivation methods on the third floor. All these years, Fang Qingshan had taken away almost all the incomplete immortal cultivation methods on the third floor. Then, he had used the timeless arc to build the sutra depository to deduce and perfect them. Now, it was already very effective. However, due to the grade of the sutra depository and the consumption of eternal divine power, etc., the speed of deduction and perfection was very slow. Therefore, the harvest was naturally not as much as he had imagined. Although he had taken away all the incomplete cultivation methods and divine powers on the third floor, he had only perfected 10 or 20% of them. Although it was not as many as the cultivation methods below and at the primordial chaos level. However, including the 2 immortal cultivation methods that he had received for free, as well as the cultivation methods that he had perfected every year, and the cultivation methods that Fang Qingshan had exchanged for with his Tao meaning points, all in all, there were more than 100 of them. Although it was not a lot, it was enough for Fang Qingshan. At least now, he was not in the dark. He had a rough outline of the all-heaven Tao verification techniques immortal chapter. In particular, one of the cultivation methods was very suitable for him. It was like a timely rain. If that was not the case, Fang Qingshan would not be able to build a framework with just a few hundred cultivation techniques. What he had been doing all this time was hoping to outline this general outline before he gave his sermon. In this way, when listening to the Tao, one only needed to adjust perfect and add bricks and tiles. This way, not only would it be easier and more relaxing, it could also be perfected even more. This was the only way to maximize the benefits. In the secret chamber, wisps of life and death chi surged up from all directions, sank down, and collided together, condensing into a golden bell, a drum, a jade necklace, a canopy, a rui, and a treasured umbrella. They hummed even though there was no wind, and celestial music filled the air. Mixed with the dense smoke in the incense burner, it was intoxicating and made one's mind wander. Fang Qingshan sat cross-legged on the cattail hassock in the middle of the room. Life and death were intertwined. A chessboard appeared above his head, and the chess pieces shone like stars. There were tens of thousands of them, and they shone brilliantly. This item was the all-heaven chessboard. A wheel behind his head reflected the universe, and endless clouds rushed out from the top of his head. The auspicious clouds flickered with a lush green brilliance, overlapping and unfathomable. In his mind, one immortal cultivation technique after another appeared. That was because these cultivation techniques were all deduced and perfected by the Sutra Pavilion. And Fang Qingshan himself could be said to be Fang Qingshan's alternative artifact spirit. Therefore, these cultivation techniques were equivalent to Fang Qingshan's tempering and cultivation countless times. When they were transmitted into his mind, it was as if he had reincarnated 100 times. He was familiar with them, and it was even more thorough than reading those books that contained Tao. It was as if an old horse knew the way, and it was easy. There was a feeling of enlightenment. In a very short time, he had already crossed the threshold. Although he had not entered the level of small success, he was almost there. It was the same as perfecting the primordial chaos cultivation technique previously. Fang Qingshan did not want to completely master these immortal cultivation techniques. That was too unrealistic. After all, every cultivation technique was basically tempered and perfected. This was also why if a person wanted to achieve something, he had to find another way. Otherwise, it would be difficult to surpass his predecessors. After all, those who learn from me will live, and those who resemble me will die. Of course, Fang Qingshan did not have such concerns. However, he did not have that much time. Therefore, he only needed to judge and extract the most suitable part for himself. In this regard, Fang Qingshan could be said to be familiar with it. After all, the all-heaven Dao verification technique was perfected bit by bit. After experiencing it so many times, he was naturally familiar with it. Moreover, as mentioned earlier, this time, Fang Qingshan encountered a cultivation technique that was very suitable for him, so it saved him a lot of trouble. That was why he could rely on more than 100 immortal cultivation techniques to build the outline of the Immortal Manual. This cultivation technique was none other than the Myriad Realms technique. When he was on the second floor, Fang Qingshan had once obtained the incomplete 10 Realms technique. His complete name was the Myriad Realms technique, which was the cornerstone cultivation technique of a supreme force that surpassed the Dao sect. It was very difficult to observe the chaotic worlds, but if one succeeded in cultivating it, its power would naturally be infinite. Unfortunately, with the destruction of this sect, this cultivation technique had been scattered all over the world. Many forces had it, but it was not complete. Therefore, he obtained the incomplete 10 Realms technique on the second floor and encountered the incomplete 100 Realms technique on the third floor. At first, Fang Qingshan actually did not pay attention to it. He only thought that it was the same as other cultivation techniques. However, after perfecting it, when Fang Qingshan was choosing the essence, he realized that other cultivation techniques could at most choose 1 or 2 out of 10, but the 100 Realms technique could choose more than half. This made Fang Qingshan overjoyed. After all, the 100 Realms technique was a mature cultivation technique that had been tempered and had a complete inheritance. It was not just the 100 Realms, but also the 1,000 Realms and the Myriad Realms. Therefore, at this time, Fang Qingshan naturally brought it into play. Now that he had a way, he just needed to continuously modify the one that was more suitable for him, and then open up another path. This was much easier than building something from scratch. The reason why he only realized it now and did not realize it when he was cultivating the 10 Realms technique was actually very simple. It was because the mixed essence technique had been perfected to the extreme. The 10 Realms technique could only be regarded as the icing on the cake, while the 100 Realms technique was like charcoal in snowy weather to him. Naturally, they cannot be compared. Come to think of it, the reason why the 100 Realms art was suitable for Fang Qingshan. This was because, first of all, this cultivation method itself was a peerless divine cultivation method. The entire Dao Will sect's core inheritance could not compare to the complete Myriad Worlds technique. Even in the entire heavens, it could be ranked in the top. Secondly, the most difficult part of cultivating the 10 Realms technique was to observe the Myriad Realms technique. To Fang Qingshan, this was extremely easy. This was because he had the Myriad Heavens chessboard. Chapter 1387. The Celestial Chessboard. This was the most important treasure in Fang Qingshan's hands. Even the Timeless Ark could not compare to it. The reason for this was not because its function was more powerful than the Timeless Ark Sa. After all, although the Celestial Chessboard was very good, the Timeless Ark was not bad either. The reason why it was the most important was that Fang Qingshan relied on this treasure from the beginning. Because of him, Fang Qingshan was able to come to this vast world from the end of days. Because of him, Fang Qingshan was able to turn misfortune into fortune. Because of him, Fang Qingshan could grow to the present in the shortest time. Therefore, although the Celestial Chessboard seemed not as important as the Timeless Ark now, it still had a completely different position in Fang Qingshan's heart. Like the Timeless Ark, this treasure was a comprehensive magic weapon. Its most basic and commonly used function was naturally to travel through the myriad worlds. As long as one entered it smoothly, one could intercept the origin power of a world and integrate it into the Celestial Chessboard, turning it into a chess piece. On the one hand, it would be easier to travel more freely next time. On the other hand, It could be used to evolve a world for attack and defense. When he was in a mortal world, Tai Hun Tian attacked Fong Qingshan, and he relied on this to escape successfully. With the origin power of a chaotic world, wouldn't it be natural to observe the outline of the world? Therefore, cultivating the myriad worlds technique was very troublesome for others. But for Fong Qingshan, who had the celestial chessboard, it was a simple matter. As long as he spent a certain amount of luck to open a chaotic world, he could easily observe the outline of the world. The only thing he needed to consider was the amount of luck. However, compared to the difficulty of getting started, anyone would be ecstatic to have a shortcut to luck. Using the celestial chessboard with the myriad worlds technique was like adding wings to a tiger. Therefore, even though there were only 100 or so immortal level cultivation techniques, Fong Qingshan still managed to sketch out the general outline of the Tao Verification Scriptures Immortal section. Borrowing chickens to lay eggs. Fong Qingshan used the framework of the Myriad Realms technique as the foundation and modified it slightly to suit the path of the Heavens Tao Verification technique, which was suitable for him. Then he integrated the essence of other cultivation techniques into it. 1 door, 2 doors, 3 doors. Fong Qingshan continued to observe, extract, refine, integrate, adjust, polish. During this process, the immortal chapter of the All Heavens Tao Verification technique was constantly being perfected, and Fong Qingshan's knowledge also increased along with it. After all, even if one only grasped the surface of these techniques, it would still greatly broaden one's horizons. It would become one's own accumulation and foundation. The Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture began. 100 years later, a piece of news, a grand event, spread like a clap of thunder across the boundless void and the 10,000 worlds in the universe. Countless living beings were running around and discussing about it. Some were beating their chest and stamping their feet, sighing continuously. Some were overjoyed, as if a pie had fallen from the sky. Some were silent and hurried on with their journey. The location of Fuyuan Mountain was also confirmed. This was one of the luckier times for the general public. This was because the place where Fuyuan Mountain appeared wasn't in a remote corner, nor was it in a dangerous place or a natural disaster. Instead, it manifested in a boundless void in the middle of the 10,000 worlds in the universe. Unfortunately, even so, other than the living beings in the nearby worlds, other living beings, unless they had the sword token of the storm or disciples of big sects or forces, had the means to rush over in a short period of time. It would be wishful thinking to rush over in a short period of time. Just like the Purple Cloud Palace's opening, once it reached 3,000 people, the palace would close. It was naturally the same for Fuyuan Mountain. After Fuyuan Mountain manifested, it would only be open for 3 years. Once the time was up, Fuyuan Mountain would close and escape into the void again. Tao couldn't be imparted easily. Although the Sword Emperor of the Storm felt that it was difficult to be a rogue cultivator and wanted to impart Tao to the masses, he wanted to take the opportunity to comprehend the profoundness of disaster and fortune. However, he knew that there was a limit. If it was too easy, they wouldn't cherish it. Fortunately, this had nothing to do with Fong Qingshan. He had the sword token of the storm in his hand. No matter where he was, as long as his power level wasn't higher than the Sword Emperor of the Storm, he would be teleported to Fuyuan Mountain immediately as long as he crushed the token. Tao will sect, Island of Life and Death. In the secret chamber, ding dong, a crisp and melodious sound rang out, causing Fong Qingshan, who was immersed in the great Tao, to be surprised. A simple and unadorned token floated in the air and shone brightly. A sharp sword and a divine mountain manifested. They seemed real and illusory at the same time, real and fake at the same time. Fong Qingshan slowly opened his eyes. His pupils were deep like a black hole. He looked up at the 9 heavens and down at the netherworld. Everything in the universe was in his palm. Behind him, there was a 6 paths reincarnation roulette that was held up high. On top of it, specks of light emerged and gathered together, forming a golden cloud that was filled with a rich fragrance. The light swirled around the cloud in a certain pattern, and each of the specks of light was a world of its own. What a great myriad worlds technique. It's indeed impressive. This was the outline of the myriad worlds technique that Feng Qingshan had used as the basic framework, the natal law of reincarnation as the link, and the essence of many immortal level cultivation techniques. He had evolved it into the immortal chapter that was suitable for him. Despite his haste, he finally succeeded at the very last moment. It's time. Feng Qingshan sighed. He extended his hand, and the floating token landed in Feng Qingshan's hand. If it wasn't the sword token of the storm, what else could it be? After Fuan Mountain manifested, the windstorm sword token sent a message immediately, reminding the owner that Fuyuan Mountain was about to begin. Feng Qingshan made some adjustments and crushed the token at the first possible moment. Chi! Buzz! The next moment, a shadow that seemed to be the windstorm sword emperor appeared. He opened his mouth and spat out a word that was as heavy as a mountain. Then there was the sound of a bell. Chi filled the surroundings, and clouds rolled in all directions. A vast and unbelievable power descended and landed on Feng Qingshan. Then Feng Qingshan suddenly felt dizzy and dizzy. He even felt dizzy and dazed as if he had reincarnated thousands of times. This feeling was even more exciting than when he had passed through the wormhole. In a split second, Feng Qingshan disappeared from Daoi's sect. When he woke up, he was already in an unfamiliar place. At the same time, not only Feng Qingshan, but Zhang Baowang also took out the windstorm sword token. The two of them broke through the void from the Dao chaotic world almost at the same time. The mighty power of an emperor god completely disregarded the various defenses of Daoi's sect. It was imaginable that such a huge movement would cause such a huge commotion. For a moment, the sect leader, elders, and supreme elders of Daoi's sect were shocked. They thought that something unforeseen had happened. Fortunately, they did not activate their strongest defense and take out their level 4 supreme treasures. Fortunately, they were experienced and knowledgeable people. Soon, they knew what was going on. While they heaved a sigh of relief, their hearts were instantly filled with joy. Chapter 1388. The surprise came so suddenly that the big shots of the Dao sect couldn't react in time. The Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon was something that even many peak god emperors would flock to. For example, they would be ecstatic if they had the chance to attend. After all, a celestial emperor, a blue-titled celestial emperor at that, was an existence that was considered a giant in the entire universe. If it was for the Dao sect, it would be a grand occasion even before the sect ancestor had fallen, let alone now. Not to mention them, even the disciples of the top 100 forces on the sovereign forces ranking were as numerous as carps in the river. Unfortunately, all of this depended on luck. As no one knew where Fuyuan Mountain would appear, there were less than 10,000 sword tokens of the storm. Since the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon, the number of times that the Dao sect's disciples had attended could be counted on one hand. They didn't have much hope at first, but not only did their disciples obtain sword tokens of the storm, but there were also 2 of them. In particular, one of them was a true disciple, Jiang Overlord, who had been heavily nurtured. Although it was a little regretful that it was not them, they were all disciples of the Dao sect, so they should keep the goodies within the family. Why was the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermons so desirable? The reason was very simple. Every time someone listened to the Dao, regardless of their identity or cultivation, they would all benefit greatly. Jiang Overlord was at the peak immortal realm. After listening to the sermon, he would definitely break through to the God Emperor realm. Moreover, it wasn't just a breakthrough in cultivation. More importantly, the possibility of him breaking through to become an emperor god would increase. This wasn't God's blessing for the Dao sect. Feng Qingshan didn't know what the people of the Dao sect were thinking, nor did he care. At this moment, he was sizing up Fuyuan Mountain. This was indeed the residence of a god emperor. Feng Qingshan had never seen a better place than this. Of course, this was also because he was only at the primordial chaos realm and had just come to the boundless void. In the past, the best place in the Pangu chaotic world was the Purple Cloud Palace or the origin of the Great Dao. However, Those places couldn't compare to a God Emperor's Tao field. As for the Dao sect, it had once had a God Emperor. Not to mention that he hadn't seen the real core of the Dao sect. Even if he did, Fang Qingshan didn't think it would be better than this place. After all, the Dao sect had declined, and its old ancestor couldn't compare to the Sword Emperor of the Storm. However, it wasn't right to say that he had never seen a better place. After all, Fang Qingshan had left the world and went to the primordial origin of the storm. After all, he had seen the place where the everlasting lotus was. He had seen the place where the everlasting lotus was. However, how was it good? He didn't know if it was because the great Tao was the simplest, or if it was just a glimpse and he didn't really experience it himself, or if there were other reasons. But in terms of pleasing to the eye, Fang Qingshan was still a notch above this place. After all, that place was far too monotonous. Besides the eternal blue lotus, there was only endless grand mist energy. Blessed Fate Mountain was covered in green clouds. The mountain reflected the color of the water. The pine trees were dense, and the moss flowers bloomed. It made one feel refreshed. Crystal clear sunlight shone down from the gaps between the branches and leaves. It was sparse like clear snow. All kinds of treasured flames and golden light shone on the world. The fragrance of the spiritual roots was dreamy. Pavilions and pavilions were arranged in neat rows. They were exceptionally gorgeous. The sound of the wind flute, the evening drum, and the morning bell entered one's ears. Bamboo poles fell and golden lotuses swayed. The sound of the bell traveled 3,000 miles, and the sound of the scriptures flew high. Beautiful flowers bloomed under the cliff. Grass grew by the side of the road. Phoenixes couldn't fly. White deer hid on the cliff. Strange fragrance filled the universe. Clear wind pierced through the clouds. What a great God Emperor's residence. It's amazing. Fang Qingshan sighed. In this place, there was no need to talk about the scenery, spiritual qi, or Tao aura. These were all places that rarely existed in the heavens and definitely not on the earth. Fang Qingshan was even worse than Granny Lu entering the Grand View Garden. His knowledge really limited his imagination. Cultivating here, even if it couldn't be compared to the eternal blessing, it would still be a tremendous improvement. At least before the God Emperor level, he would definitely improve rapidly without much of a barrier. After sizing him up for a while, Fang Qingshan shifted his gaze to his lower body. He saw that the sword token of the storm had brought him to a plain. There was a high platform in the middle of the plain. It was crystal clear and emitted endless Tao runes. That must be the place where the Sword Emperor of the Storm preached. Although the place he was at wasn't the outermost, it was close. According to Fang Qingshan's observation, there were 3 levels around the platform. The innermost ring should be for the God Emperor, the middle ring should be for the immortal realm, and the outermost ring should be for the primordial chaos. As a peak primordial chaos, Fang Qingshan's position was close to the immortal realm. However, at the same time, Fang Qingshan also discovered another difference, and that was the futon. Yes, there were 2 types of futons at the scene. One was an ordinary futon. Of course, it was produced by the Divine Emperor. Even if it was ordinary, it was still somewhat magical. However, compared to the other type of futon, it obviously paled in comparison. This futon was under Fang Qingshan's feet. It looked like gold or jade and emitted mottled divine radiance. Although he hadn't sat down, Fang Qingshan already felt his mind clear. It was just like when he sat under the Bodhi tree and drank primordial chaos spiritual liquid. This should be another benefit of the sword token of the storm. Fang Qingshan guessed. Seeing that more and more people were getting up, Fang Qingshan didn't think too much and quickly sat down. As soon as he sat on the futon, Fang Qingshan immediately felt waves of cool aura permeate. His whole body quivered and his mind shook in an instant. Suddenly, he felt refreshed. Just as he had guessed earlier, this futon had a magical effect. It could allow people to eliminate distracting thoughts, gather their minds, become more focused, and recover the depletion of their mental willpower. It was just like the futons in the Purple Cloud Palace in the past. At the same time, Fang Qingshan naturally felt envious and jealous gazes from all directions. Fong Qingshan ignored those gazes that were vaguely provocative and unkind. As for Fong Qingshan, he also smiled and nodded to those who had kind intentions. After all, everyone could gather together to listen to the teachings at the same time. Although it couldn't be considered as coming from the same sect, it could be considered fate. Moreover, those who could come here to listen to the teachings were either disciples of the major sects or people with great fortune. Although Fong Qingshan wouldn't go so far as to curry favor with them, he couldn't be arrogant enough to reject their goodwill. He would make more enemies for no reason. I'm Shui Lilong from the Fluttering Snow Palace. May I know how to address you, Taoist, and where are you from? A man who was at the peak primordial chaos like Fong Qingshan had bright but not sharp eyes. He stared at Fong Qingshan, smiled, and took the initiative to speak. Chapter 1389. At this moment, the Sword Emperor of the Storm had yet to arrive. Everyone was looking around at the scenery and the people to calm down their excitement. I am Fong Qingshan from the Dao sect. Seeing that someone had asked, Fong Qingshan did not reject them and responded with a smile. At the same time, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. As expected, the people here were either from big sects or itinerant cultivators with great fortune. Although Fong Qingshan didn't know about Shui Lilong, he knew about the Fluttering Snow Palace. It was a sect more powerful than the Dao sect and had a celestial emperor in charge. The size of a force depended on whether it had a celestial emperor or not. Without a celestial emperor, no matter how deep the foundation was, it would still be something with a celestial emperor. Next was the Grade 4 Cardinal Treasures. After all, although a Grade 4 Cardinal Treasure couldn't be compared to a celestial emperor, it still had the might of a celestial emperor. Next was the various foundations, resources, blessed lands, arrays, disciples, etc. The Fluttering Snow Palace didn't just have a celestial emperor in charge. The Grade 4 Cardinal Treasure, the Icy Snow Pearl, was also extremely powerful. If this trend continued, it wouldn't be a problem to enter the top 100 of the Supreme Forces list. Fong Qingshan? Everyone's expression changed slightly, but they didn't understand because it was also an unfamiliar name. Fong Qingshan didn't know him. Obviously, his reputation wasn't great either. However, like Fong Qingshan, although everyone didn't know him, they knew about the Dao sect. In the myriad of worlds, no one would dare to say for sure which sect was the strongest. That was because even though there was a Supreme Forces list, the rankings on the list were only approximate. The top 10 rankings could change at any time. That was because no one knew what kind of trump cards they had up their sleeves. However, in the boundless void, who else could it be other than the Dao sect that people wanted to make friends with the most? The world was bustling for benefits, and the world was bustling for benefits. What friends? As long as the benefits were sufficient, not to stab a friend twice was already good enough. For the sake of benefits, not to mention friends, even deceiving one's master, killing one's ancestors, killing one's own disciples, killing one's own siblings, falling out with one's husband, and so on were common occurrences. However, such things had never happened to the Dao sect before. Making friends with them gave you peace of mind. At least you didn't have to worry about them plotting against you. This was the pinnacle after the Dao sect sacrificed their ancestor for a promise. Therefore, even though the Dao sect didn't have a God Emperor old ancestor and was being suppressed, it was still ranked in the top 200. This was the reason why many forces with God Emperors were still ranked behind them. So, the Taoist is a disciple of the Dao sect. My apologies. I'm Yu Qigong from the Dao sect. Greetings, Taoist. I am Jing Shiwan from the illustrious Virtue Palace. Greetings, fellow Taoist. After knowing that Fong Qingshan came from the Dao sect, the unfriendly gazes in the surroundings were slightly reduced, and the friendly gazes were naturally even more friendly. Dao to Dao to Dao to the Dao. Fellow Taoist, you are really lucky to have obtained the Windstorm Sword Token. Shui Lilong, who was the first to speak, waited for Fong Qingshan to finish greeting the crowd before continuing. When everyone heard this, they felt another wave of envy. Because just like Fong Qingshan had guessed, this praying mat was a form of fortune. Apart from Fong Qingshan, There were very few people in the entire Chaos Essence Circle, although the Storm Sword token depended on luck. But sometimes, opportunities weren't just about luck. They could also be about strength and money. This could be seen when Fong Qingshan first saw the Shang chaotic world of the Storm Sword token. The Storm Sword token that was auctioned was obtained by a rogue cultivator by chance. Logically speaking, after obtaining such a fortuitous encounter, there shouldn't be any hesitation in choosing to listen to the Tao. Unfortunately, it wasn't that he didn't want to, but that he couldn't. It would be fine if no one knew about it, just like how Mosquito Dowrin had obtained the Windstorm Sword token. However, once the news was leaked, it would be a crime to have a jade ring. This was no longer a fortuitous encounter, but a hot potato. If he did not hand it over as soon as possible, it would probably become a life-threatening talisman. Then, during the auction, didn't Jiang Mingyue use her wealth to bid for this token? Therefore, although the Storm Sword token depended on luck, the chances of it ending up in the hands of the primordial Chaos Essence Circle were slim. After all, they were still a little weak. They had the will, but not the strength. Therefore, when they saw Fong Qingshan sitting on the special cushion, they were envious and jealous. Preaching was the same as listening to a lecture. In fact, the closer one was to the teacher, the purest and densest Tao runes would be. Naturally, one would be able to listen more clearly and benefit more. However, it was impossible for the Divine Emperor and the primordial Chaos Essence Circle to sit together. Therefore, there was a difference in the cushion. With the cushion, the problem of distance could be made up. It's just luck. Fong Qingshan smiled and said humbly. At this moment, just as the crowd was about to say something, there was a sudden change in the sky. There was a burst of light. It was like the end of the world. A storm swept across. Everyone, including the God Emperor, even their primordial spirits, stopped functioning. It was as though they could only sit and wait for death. However, in the blink of an eye, everything dissipated as though nothing had happened at all. There was only the boundless sword light that seemed to pierce through the void and landed on the lecture stage. The sword light seemed to connect the heavens and the earth. After the clouds dispersed and everything returned to normal, a figure appeared. It seemed illusory and real at the same time. It was a man shrouded in smoke and clouds. He seemed to be right in front of them, but at the same time, he seemed to be separated by endless time and space. It was hazy, making it difficult to see him clearly. Even the God Emperor sitting on the first floor, who had a secret art, the God's Eye, could only see a dreamy silhouette. He couldn't see his face clearly. I, Yun Xinxiu, pay my respects to the Sword Emperor of the Windstorm. A man sitting in the first row at the center of the lecture stage was the first to recover from the shock of the Sword Emperor of the Windstorm. He immediately stood up and bowed respectfully. This was like a signal that woke the others up in an instant. They reacted one after another and hurriedly stood up. One by one, they addressed themselves as unlearned and greeted him. This was respect. The Sword Emperor of the Windstorm was a God Emperor with a strong attack power. He had a blue title and stood at the top of the pyramid of the boundless void. Not to mention them, even many God Emperors had to greet him. It was only right for him to be respected. Moreover, one should not forget the one who dug the well. They were here to listen to the Sword Emperor of the Windstorm's preaching. They naturally had to be grateful for his kindness. Forget it. There's no need to be so courteous. After the Sword Emperor of the Windstorm accepted their greetings, his voice rang out. It was a little forceful, with a hint of sharpness and emptiness. It was as though it came from the void far away. Chapter 1390. Looking at all the talented juniors, I am very comforted. The Sword Emperor of the Storm sat on the Tao platform, looking at everyone. However, the Sword Emperor of the Storm wasn't looking at their appearance, nor was he trying to pry into their privacy. Instead, he was looking at their luck and fate. After all, besides feeling grateful for the kindness he'd received from numerous seniors while he was seeking the Tao all those years ago, the reason he'd held a platform to preach the Tao was because he'd received the kindness of numerous seniors and experts while he was seeking the Tao all those years ago. More importantly, it was for cultivation. He wouldn't wake up early without benefits. Otherwise, Why would the God Emperor go through so much trouble for no reason and for no reason at all? Did he really think that everyone was a good person like Hongyan? Moreover, Hongyan's good person image was just on the surface. His good karma was also for cultivation. Although the Sword Emperor of the Storm achieved Tao because of the void natural disaster, and in order to prove his Tao, he even charged into the natural disaster time and time again without any fear of death. Was it a matter of life or death? Was it a matter of cutting off all means of retreat and fighting with his back to the river? No, at least not all of them. If others were to court death like him, they wouldn't even have a grave, not to mention grass growing on their graves. However, the Sword Emperor of the Storm was still alive and well, and he even became an emperor. What did he rely on? Why was he the only one who could do it? It was actually very simple. Because he didn't just cultivate the Tao of storm and natural disaster, he also cultivated the Tao of fate and fortune. This was also why he was known as the Storm, and the dojo as the source of fortune. This was also why he would hold a Tao lecture every once in a while. It wasn't just for the common people, it was also for cultivation. Those who could come to Fortune Mountain were all people with great fortune, opportunities, and luck. After listening to his Tao lecture, they naturally formed karma with him. Although the Sword Emperor of the Storm wouldn't use demonic methods, he could use them to observe the changes in their fate, and from there, improve his own Tao of fortune. Yin and Yang were two levels. They were born and destroyed together. When the Fortune Mountain improved, the natural disaster would naturally improve as well. Putting all this aside, the Sword Emperor of the Storm opened his eyes, and in an instant, countless karma and blessings flashed past. It was as though whoever his gaze landed on would receive blessings. As far as the eye could see, numerous pillars of karmic luck shot into the sky, and they were all purplish gold in color. Some evolved into jade flutes, pipa, drums, bugles, chimes, and other musical instruments. Some evolved into dragons, phoenixes, kuan pungs, ferocious beasts, great evils, and other living beings. Some evolved into storms, stars, oceans, earth, and other natures. They collided with each other, creating a tinkling sound. Those who could come to Fuyuan Mountain to listen to the Tao would not have bad luck. The quality of this batch was especially high. At the very least, the Sword Emperor of the Storm saw 3 God Emperors. Even though Fang Qingshan was also a so-called Emperor-class prodigy, he still had a long way to go before he could become an Emperor. These 3 had almost reached the half-step Emperor realm, and one of them was the Freedom Sect's Yun Qinxiu. These people were even stronger than Old Tan had been in the past. The Sword Emperor of the Storm was almost certain that the 3 of them would definitely become emperors. Although there were only 3 and it seemed like a small number, it should be known that there might not even be 1 in 10,000 peak God Emperors who could become an emperor. Among the God Emperors, there were a few immortal emperors that he thought highly of. However, what made the Sword Emperor of the Storm's attention the most was that he saw an oddity among the primordial chaos. That was Fang Qingshan. As a peak primordial chaos who had not even reached the immortal realm, he had almost no karma. He could stay in seclusion in some grotto heaven all year round, not paying attention to the outside world, and only focus on cultivating the eternal Tao. It was easy to not have any karma. He could use a treasure like the Red Lotus of Fire to erase it, or use the power of merit to remove it. However, his luck was actually higher than many immortal emperors and even God Emperors. This was interesting. In particular, Fang Qingshan's luck was actually his own luck, which was actually higher than external luck. This was even more interesting. Under normal circumstances, there were 2 kinds of luck. One was his own luck, and the other was external luck. His own luck was his own luck. It was the concentrated embodiment of one's fortune, wisdom, cultivation, wealth, and so on. On the other hand, external luck was based on one's background, backer, cultivation partner, and so on. Under normal circumstances, at least before a God Emperor, external luck was higher than his own luck. However, it was the opposite for Fang Qingshan. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan was only a primordial chaos existence, and the Sword Emperor of the Storm was not someone who liked to get to the bottom of things. Therefore, The Sword Emperor of the Storm's gaze only paused on Feng Qingshan for a while before moving away. The people sitting down did not notice it at all, not to mention the others. Even Feng Qingshan did not sense it. This was different from Elder Tan or Elder Zhe. When they looked at him, although they felt like they had been stripped naked, they could still sense it. On the other hand, the Sword Emperor of the Storm's gaze was like a warm wind that intoxicated tourists. Not only did it not make people feel vigilant, but it also made them a little addicted. This was because it was a kind of fortune in itself. After the Sword Emperor of the Storm looked around, he also saw some familiar people. Some of them had come to listen once or twice. Their cultivation and luck had increased tremendously as compared to before, which was a little helpful for him to comprehend the Tao. Moreover, the quality of this batch of people was a notch higher than the previous batches. After listening to the Tao and growing up, it would be even more helpful to him. Cutting to the chase, the Sword Emperor of the Storm quickly retracted his gaze, entered the state, and started to preach. The Sword Emperor of the Storm released his aura, and the boundless halo circled above his head, as though he was the center of the entire universe. It gave off a great brilliance, and the auspicious clouds were continuous, rising and falling. Within it, billions of golden lamps and jade pearls were circulating, and the treasure light was like dripping water under the eaves, flowing continuously. Looking closely, time and space had become folded. Within it, karma was isolated, and no one knew what was inside or outside. At this moment, everyone quieted down and even held their breaths. It was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. It was as though they were afraid of making any movements, afraid that any noise would disturb this moment and ruin the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao preaching. Delaying the Tao preaching wasn't the most important thing, but if they infuriated the Sword Emperor of the Storm, it would really be an unlucky year. At this moment, silence spoke louder than words. If you want to discuss Tao, let's talk about Tao first. What is Tao? Tao can be said, but it's not Tao. It's indescribable, hard to touch, and extremely mysterious. However, Tao is everywhere. Heaven and earth are Tao. Wind and rain are Tao. Living beings are Tao, and everything can be Tao. Sentence after sentence came out of the Sword Emperor of the Storm's mouth at a speed that wasn't fast or slow. From the peak of the Tao preaching platform, it spread downwards and entered everyone's ears. The words were clearly very simple and direct, easy to understand, and seemed very straightforward. In fact, there were many things that Feng Qingshan had heard, seen, and comprehended before and seemed to have understood. However, after the Sword Emperor of the Storm spoke, he still felt as though he was enlightened. Chapter 1391. Why was it that when an elder talked about the great Tao, it was an opportunity for most people, so much so that they wanted to squeeze their way in? Not because anything else, but just from this, one could see the whole picture. Everyone knew that the great Tao was the simplest, but there were very few who could do this. Yet, from the mouth of the God Emperor, it was as if it was easy, like a normal person chatting. But it was these simple things that seemed to have been comprehended and understood before. At this moment, when he listened to it, he had a different kind of comprehension. It was as if he didn't truly understand it. Or perhaps he had pushed a new layer to reveal something even more profound and profound. When it entered his ears, it gave him an indescribable comprehension, a comprehension related to the Tao. The Sword Emperor of the Storm was indeed an existence at the level of a Sword Emperor. He spoke from a strategically advantageous position, yet he was very down to earth. With a few words, every word was like a gem, causing everyone to be intoxicated. The Tao lecture naturally started from the basics. This was to take care of Feng Qingshan and the others at Primordial Chaos Realm. Otherwise, if he talked about the profound, great Tao from the start, other than a few people, the rest would have come for nothing. As they wouldn't understand it all, if they tried to comprehend it forcefully, they would be devoured by the great Tao. It might not be an opportunity, but a disaster. While it was basic stuff, even the immortals and God Emperors felt that it was very beneficial, much less Fang Qingshan and the others. After all, skyscrapers were built from the ground up. Why did everyone attach so much importance to the foundation? Without the foundation, how could one go higher? If one wanted to go higher and further, the foundation was necessary. Without a strong foundation, even if one built a tall building, it would just be a castle in the air. It would be fine if there were no accidents, but once there was a storm, the building would collapse. Cultivating Tao. Cultivating Tao. To cultivate Tao, one had to first understand Tao. If one didn't know what Tao was, how could one talk about cultivating Tao? While the Sword Emperor of the Storm spoke simply and talked about the basics, it was the essence of things. While it was a cliché, it went straight to the core. In order to let the crowd listen more and comprehend more, the Sword Emperor of the Storm displayed a method similar to the words of law. It was like the books in the Tao Palace that used words to record the Tao. Not only did he follow the book, but he also had his understanding of Tao. As soon as the words left his mouth, they entered his ears, as if they were engraved on his primordial spirit, as if they were instinctive. However, this was only a facade. As the saying goes, the master leads the way, but the cultivation is up to the individual. As for how much he could comprehend, and whether he could truly imprint it into his soul and turn it into his own, it all depended on his own luck. However, because it was just the beginning, he explained the basics in a simple way. Therefore, whether it was the God King, the Undying, or the Origin Immortal, they all listened calmly. Every now and then, a look of realization appeared on their faces. However, as time elapsed, the Sword Emperor of the Storm's sermon gradually deepened. Although his words were still simple, the Tao contained in his sermon became thicker and deeper. From the Tao of mortals to the Tao of immortals, and now to the Tao of primordial chaos. Even with the explanation of the Sword Emperor of the Storm, fusing it into his voice and transmitting his meaning through voice, due to the difference in aptitudes, cultivation, fate, etc., the things that everyone received and comprehended gradually started to be different. The first to change was naturally the primordial chaos circle, which was the furthest away from the lecture platform. First, the sermon had already reached the Tao of primordial chaos. Although they were primordial chaos cultivators, many of them didn't have a deep understanding of the Tao of primordial chaos. After all, there were high and low cultivation levels, and there were deep and shallow foundations. This was called different fates for different people. Students taught by the same teacher could be worlds apart. There were bad students and geniuses. Moreover, compared to the Undying and God Emperors, their cultivation levels were the weakest, so it was naturally more difficult for them to comprehend. Secondly, this place was the furthest away from the lecture platform. The voices and Tao runes they heard were naturally the most indistinct, so the effect was naturally much worse. With all these factors added together, some people were still calm. For example, people like Fang Qingshan who had deep foundations, or people with special praying mats. Some people frowned slightly. For example, those itinerant cultivators. In the end, their foundations were still a little lacking. This situation naturally became more and more obvious as the sermon went deeper. However, Fang Qingshan was an exception, because the God Emperor's sermon was naturally profound, but in terms of the Tao of primordial chaos, apart from being in a commanding position, it might not be of much help to him. After all, he was someone who had received eternal blessings, someone who had broken through the limits. Coupled with the assistance of the golden jade praying mat, it was as if he had divine assistance. It was unknown what this praying mat was made of, but it was truly an extraordinary treasure. Not only could it calm one's spirit and restore one's primordial spirit, but it was also equivalent to a voice transmission and translation device. With it, the primordial spirit of Fang Qingshan and the others seemed to be strengthened. It was as if they were sitting in the first circle with the God Emperors and the others, and there were people constantly translating and explaining to them. It was as if the Sword Emperor of the Storm was giving them special treatment. It was naturally easy to listen to. No matter how everyone was listening at this moment, the entire Fuyun Mountain was immersed in the Tao heavenly melody. In an instant, the sun and moon rose and set, the stars swayed, and all sorts of principles came one after another. Gold and silver intersected, flowers fell from the sky, and golden lotuses appeared on the ground. The Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon didn't just talk about the fundamentals of Tao, but also the application of Tao. He talked about the transformations of flying in the sky, all sorts of traveling lights, riding on clouds, riding on swords, discussing the mysteries of the sun and moon, the changes of the wind and clouds, the changing of the seasons, the rise and fall of prosperity and death. He talked about the relic Vajra, the 800 side skills, and the Bodhi golden lotus. He taught about the Tao of alchemy and weapons, using treasures to obtain Tao, using treasures to protect Tao. He was well-versed in the past and present, and his knowledge was profound. It was rare in the world. Although his sermon was full of references from the ancient past to the present, from the great Tao to the minor Tao, it was clear and organized. It was all-encompassing, making one unable to stop. During this process, it was as if time had stopped. Only the mysterious runes and sparks of wisdom could be seen jumping in mid-air, colliding, and forming a magnificent chapter. Fang Qingshan sat on the praying mat and tried his best to digest the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon. Even if he couldn't understand it immediately, he forced himself to memorize it. Of course, his memory wasn't based on his primordial spirit's memory. If it was so easy, the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon wouldn't be so popular. For a sermon like this, one would basically understand as much as one could understand. As for things like packing it up and taking it away, one shouldn't even think about it. Because even if one could remember it now, as long as one didn't understand it and assimilate it into one's own, one would forget it very quickly. Luckily, Fang Qingshan still had the timeless arc and the universal chessboard. These two treasures weren't to be underestimated. The timeless arc was evolved from the eternal lotus seed and wasn't an item from the universal world. Therefore, its effects were extraordinary. The universal chessboard was comparable to it, so it naturally wouldn't be at a disadvantage. However, they could be like phonographs and recorders recording the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon. Chapter 1392. Although the timeless arc and the celestial chessboard could record and record. Obviously, neither online video tutorials nor audio tapes could compare to face-to-face lectures and live concerts. After all, the timeless arc and the celestial chessboard were not omnipotent. During the recording process, it was inevitable that there would be distortion. The reason why face-to-face lectures were valuable was because of the Taoist rhymes in the voice. Not to mention recording, even listening from afar would be affected, not to mention other things. However, it was better than being able to retain one or two Taoist rhymes. Compared to completely forgetting, it was already much better, and one could not ask for more. Contentment was everlasting happiness. Of course, these were all the worst solutions. The best solution was naturally to comprehend it on the spot. Therefore, Fang Qingshan also used a method. It was not really a method, but it was to maximize the benefits. Everyone else came to listen to the lecture alone, but Fang Qingshan brought along his entire family. Even though he was a single person, he had two clones, and both clones' talents weren't weak either. Even if they stood next to him, if he didn't deliberately expose himself, those who didn't know would think that they were two different creatures. At the same time, he also manifested the magical power of turning Sanqing. This magical power was indeed quite powerful. It could split into three clones that were no different from the main body. This was much stronger than other methods of creating all with one thought. Apart from that, there were also countless clones that densely covered the entire mind like the grains of sand in the Ganges River. Therefore, at this moment, if one could enter the sea of consciousness through Fang Qingshan's brain, one would be able to see such a scene. Among the floating clouds, two treasures, 6 people, and countless clones were floating. Needless to say, the two treasures were the celestial chessboard and the timeless Arkansas. These two treasures were diligently recording the Tao preaching of the Sword Emperor of the Storm, so that Fang Qingshan could go back and learn from the past. As for the six people, they referred to Mosquito Dowrin, the World Tree clone, Fong Qingshan's main body, and the three clones. Among the six of them, other than Fong Qingshan's true body, the one who comprehended the most was not Mosquito Dowrin, who had reached the immortal level, but the World Tree clone. However, thinking about it, it was understandable. After all, although the cultivation of the World Tree clone was not high, its combat strength was not weaker than Mosquito Dorn's main body. The most important thing was that the nature of the world Tao he cultivated determined everything. As for the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture, even though he used his natal Great Tao to coordinate everything in order to take care of everyone, he naturally quoted from many sources. There were 3,000 Great Taos. In this way, in terms of the 5 elements of reincarnation, the comprehension of the World Tree clone was not as good as the main body, Fong Qingshan. In terms of blood and killing, the World Tree clone was not as good as Mosquito Dowrin. However, overall it was better than them. No matter what the Sword Emperor of the Storm said, he would be able to comprehend it easily. The few of them sat around Fong Qingshan's primordial spirit, and each of them chose their own comprehensions from the Sword Emperor of Storm sermon. When it was simple, they could still completely comprehend it without missing a single point. However, when it came to a profound level, it was obviously impossible. After all, their realm, knowledge, and foundation were all there, and they could not compare to the Divine Emperor. Therefore, at this time, they had to distinguish their priorities, have a target, and make choices. They had to be willing to give up. Although the World Tree clone had comprehended the 3,000 Great Taos, it should also start from the laws that he was best at, such as the Wood Great Tao. It was the same for Mosquito Dowrin. He first comprehended the laws of blood, killing, and engulfing before moving on to the others. Fong Qingshan's 3 clones comprehended the 5 elements, life and death and reincarnation. As for the main body, he was coordinating. He was not restricted to any one of the laws. Instead, he used the immortal chapter of the Heavens Tao verification technique that he had already completed as a foundation. He continuously absorbed the Sword Emperor of the Storm sermon, as well as the comprehensions of Mosquito Dowrin and the others, to fill in and perfect the immortal chapter. Other than the treasures, the main body, Mosquito Dowrin, the World Tree clone, and the one turned into Sanqing, the other countless clones were actually equivalent to experimental subjects. The research of a new drug required clinical trials, and the creation of a cultivation technique was naturally even more so. After all, the path of cultivation was a very dangerous thing. If one was not careful, they could go berserk. Why were some cultivation techniques that were clearly very powerful, but usually left on the shelf? It was because they had not been perfected and tested. It was very easy to make mistakes when cultivating. Creating a cultivation technique was obviously not that simple. He was not eating, drinking, sleeping, or traveling. He could not afford to be careless, and naturally, it was not an easy thing. Any cultivation technique that was passed down was formed after thousands of trials and tribulations. From its creation to its popularization, it had been continuously cultivated and perfected by countless generations of people. It was unknown how many difficulties had been experienced during this period before it was finally formed. If a sect wanted to flourish, it definitely did not rely on those things. Although the effects were great, the cultivation conditions were harsh, and it was easy to go berserk. Instead, it was something that could be popularized. Although the former could be awe-inspiring for a while, it would never be able to flourish. It might even be lost and ineffective after millions of years. For a moment, various phenomena appeared above Fong Qingshan's head, just like the others. Finally, it stopped on a roulette and a chessboard. The roulette was naturally the 6 paths of reincarnation golden plate. It was the manifestation of Fong Qingshan's life Great Tao. The chessboard was the reflection of the chessboard of the heavens. The chess pieces inside were lit up one by one, and they were all worlds. Using the roulette to lift the chessboard, using reincarnation to lift the heavens. This was the Immortal Heavens chapter that Fang Qingshan had comprehended using the Myriad Worlds technique as the framework. Because the Immortal chapter had not been completely built, this phenomenon was not solid. Not long after, it collapsed and turned into an incomplete scripture. It was scattered with thousands of words, like the graffiti of a primary school student. There were large sections of blank space. It was just like building a house. The foundation had just been laid, and if one wanted to rise from the ground, they would need to continuously add bricks and tiles. Then, the clones began to move in an orderly manner. These clones began to cultivate the immortal chapter that had just been completed. It was not a simple trial. Instead, they cultivated the all-heaven Tao verification technique from the mortal realm and personally felt the changes that occurred in each realm of the cultivation technique. They wanted to see if it was a perfect fit with the immortal chapter in the end. This kind of ability was absolutely unimaginable. Even if many people knew of this method, they would not be able to do it. This was because ordinary cloning techniques could not achieve this at all. However, Mosquito Doran's 480 million blood god scions were unique. What Mosquito Doran knew, Fang Qingshan naturally knew too. Therefore, Fang Qingshan could easily deduce and perfect the cultivation technique every time. His cultivation was also smooth sailing. This was because he had already cultivated the cultivation technique before the immortal realm thousands of times. He knew all the bottlenecks and obstacles in between. Chapter 1393. It was different from Mosquito Doran's battle at 10,000 Beast Mountain. There, in order to maintain combat strength, the number of blood god scions that were created was more important than quantity. However, creating blood god scions was just for cultivation and could be destroyed at any time. As such, there was no need for cultivation. Instead, it was Han Xin who trained the soldiers. These clones first cultivated the all-heavens Tao validation technique to the mixed yuan section. Then, they tried to cultivate the immortal section that Fang Qingshan had just completed. Although he had the experience of creating the mortal section, golden immortal section, Daoyuo section, and mixed yuan section, although he had already set up the framework and used the all-worlds technique as the foundation. Although the Sword Emperor of the Storm was still teaching and perfecting it. However, it was obvious that the immortal section was just a test product. As such, he still needed clinical trials to adjust it. Since it was a test product, then all sorts of accidents were unavoidable. As such, from time to time, one could see clones explode, freeze into a ball, burn without any wind, or, in the end, only a bit of spirituality was left. It turned into a streak of light and instantly entered Fang Qingshan's mind. It was obvious that something went wrong during the cultivation process, and they went berserk. However, although they went berserk, they were still useful for reference. As the saying went, failure was the mother of success. Success was built on the lessons learned from countless failures. Within the streak of spirituality, it contained all the comprehension of the immortal section that the clones had cultivated. It made Fang Qingshan feel like he had personally cultivated it once. The feeling was magical and extremely clear. Every bit of comprehension naturally flowed in his mind, and then turned into resources to adjust the immortal chapter, helping him to continuously improve the cultivation method to perfection. With the existence of the clones, Fang Qingshan was able to complete the immortal section in the shortest amount of time possible. At that moment, a milky white light appeared behind Fang Qingshan's head. In a trance, he seemed to see all the books that Fang Qingshan had read in the Tao Palace. One could even say that it was all the civilizations that Fang Qingshan had seen since he was born. Among them, there were many great Confucian scholars who had studied extensively. This was none other than the wisdom halo. A spark was ignited, but it was the fire of wisdom. Using himself as the furnace, wisdom as the charcoal, the immortal chapter as the copper, and the Sword Emperor of the Storm as the worker. Using countless immortal great Taos as nourishment, extracting their essence and merging it into a furnace. Although it was difficult, Fang Qingshan had already made preparations beforehand. Coupled with the Sword Emperor of the Storm's lecture, everything was in order. With every passing moment, the immortal chapter of the All Heavens Tao verification spell would be perfected a little bit, and Fang Qingshan would take the steadiest step forward unswervingly. As the Sword Emperor of the Storm's sermon went deeper, Fang Qingshan and the rest started to feel the strain. The others might still be trying their best to comprehend, not letting go of even the slightest bit. But Fang Qingshan gave up. That was because he understood that the size of a bowl could only hold as much rice as it could hold. If he ate too much, he would definitely feel bloated. Immortality was his limit. God Emperors, and even God Emperors, were just like heavenly books to him. If he tried to comprehend it forcefully, he might even suffer a backlash from the great Tao. If it was yours, it was yours. If it wasn't yours, it wasn't yours. He couldn't force it. Most importantly, Fang Qingshan's main objective was to create the immortal chapter. Moreover, he still had the timeless arc and the all-heavens chessboard to inscribe. Even if he didn't listen now, he could still revise when he returned. Although the effects might not be that great, it was enough. Therefore, after the Sword Emperor of the Storm's lecture became more profound, Fang Qingshan and the rest completely immersed themselves in perfecting the immortal chapter. As for the Sword Emperor of the Storm's sermon, he treated it as the Bodhi tree, mixed elemental spiritual liquid, Tao comprehension tea, and other existences that enhanced his intelligence and accelerated the perfecting of the immortal chapter. For a moment, the others were either drowsy, confused, overjoyed, or frowning. There were all sorts of emotions. Fang Qingshan was the only one who remained calm, maintaining a joyful expression. After all, the immortal chapter was being perfected every moment. It was just like how even though his cultivation base didn't improve much, it was still improving at every moment. Clones were created one after another, cultivating, exploding, returning, and splitting again. The cycle repeated. As for Fang Qingshan, he was able to comprehend more and more detailed, and more refined. Naturally, the all-heavens Tao corroborating undecaying chapter was also becoming more and more perfect. Although the immortal chapter in the past had a rough framework, it was like a child's scribbling. Not only were many places blank, but they were also very blurry. However, at this moment, it was like a high school student's model essay. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as before. 3,000 to 5,000 characters soared into the sky. Each character was as large as a dipper, enshrouded in purple energy. Octagonal radiance hung down from them, suspended high above like the sun and moon passing through the sky, rivers flowing through the earth. There was a type of eternally unchanging, a type of profound nature. As the immortal chapter was perfected, Fang Qingshan also unknowingly changed the circulation route of the cultivation technique in his body. An even stronger power flowed in his body. That was the power of immortality. It became purer and more vast, and its might became more shocking. Although Fang Qingshan hadn't broken through in cultivation, his magic power, primordial spirit, and corporeal body had already taken the first step towards immortality. However, Fang Qingshan knew nothing about this. Now, he was fully immersed in perfecting the immortal chapter. After all, this opportunity was hard to come by, and he couldn't afford to miss it. Naturally, he had to make use of every minute and second. It was shameful to waste it. Moreover, his entire mind was immersed in the comprehension of Tao. It left him with endless aftertaste, and he couldn't extricate himself from it. The Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture was indeed worth the money. It was no wonder that there were so many people who wanted to listen. Fang Qingshan had gained a lot this time. Not only had the immortal chapter been perfected, but more importantly, the great Tao recorded in the celestial chessboard and the timeless arc, as well as the discussion about divine emperors and celestial emperors, had allowed him to see further. Of course, Fang Qingshan had gained a lot. The others had also gained a lot. Everyone was immersed in the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture and fell into various states. Perhaps they were reflecting on the past or looking forward to the future. Perhaps they were like Fang Qingshan, who had perfected his cultivation technique or had a breakthrough in his cultivation, or had comprehended a peerless mystique secret technique, or traces of different yet mystical auras surrounded everyone, especially the three divine emperors that the Sword Emperor of the Storm had predicted. Their cultivation actually had a trace of Venerable Emperor's aura. Obviously, as long as they went back and cultivated in seclusion for a period of time, breaking through was just a matter of time. Although the primordial chaos benefited the least because of their cultivation and distance. But their improvement was the most obvious. After going out, more than half of the primordial chaos here would smoothly break through to the immortal realm. They would also build a solid foundation, and the future divine emperors would be possible. Chapter 1394. There was no sun or moon in the mountains, and 1,000 years had passed in the world. Enlightenment was the time when one was least aware of the flow of time. To Feng Qingshan and the rest, it seemed like only a moment had passed. However, in reality, decades had passed unknowingly. In these decades, there would be fluctuations in the aura of some people, and they would suddenly increase by a notch. It was a breakthrough in their cultivation. Even if their cultivation did not break through, their aura would become more condensed. However, more people were expelled by the Sword Emperor of the Storm. It was not that they had offended the Sword Emperor of the Storm, but as the Sword Emperor of the Storm went deeper, they could no longer listen. If they tried to comprehend it forcefully, they would suffer the backlash of the Great Tao. Fortunately, the Sword Emperor of the Storm discovered it in time and transferred them out one by one. Otherwise, they would have to bear the consequences. Therefore, unknowingly, there were fewer and fewer people listening to the Great Tao. All of them were scratching their ears and cheeks, fidgeting and frowning. In particular, there were very few people in the Chaos Element Circle, other than Feng Qingshan and a few people sitting on the golden jade futons. Everyone else had been transferred out. Like Feng Qingshan, these few people were people with great fortune and great wisdom. Great fortune was because they were all sitting on the golden jade futons, so they could listen to more. Great wisdom was because in the end, they were like Feng Qingshan. They no longer listened to the Great Tao wholeheartedly and tried to pry into the Great Tao that did not match their realm. Instead, they used the heavenly voice of the Tao to review the old and consolidate the Great Tao that they had already heard. Of course, Feng Qingshan didn't know and didn't care about what happened to the others. At this moment, his mind was completely immersed in perfecting the immortal chapter. Originally, Feng Qingshan's original idea was to first set up the framework and then perfect 50% to 60% of it while listening to the Great Tao. As for perfecting it after that, he could take his time. He could either wait for the next eternal blessing or borrow the resources of the Tao sect. Who would have thought that his luck would be so good this time around? With the support of the Golden Jade praying mat, coupled with the fact that he knew how to make choices and be willing to part with what he lost, he gained what he lost. Even though he didn't listen to the God Emperor or the God Emperor's Great Tao, he actually managed to completely perfect the immortal chapter. At a certain moment, a flourishing text floated in the air. Immediately, rays of light shot up into the sky, covering thousands of miles. A chessboard was like a miniature version of the boundless void. Each chess piece turned into a chaotic world, scattered like stars in the sky, moving according to a certain mysterious trajectory. A roulette, black and white alternated, life and death intertwined, and time and space intertwined, connecting all the worlds, supporting the entire chessboard. Once this technique was used, even the Sword Emperor of the Storm couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. It wasn't that this cultivation method was so shocking that it could make ghosts and gods weep. Although the immortal chapter was not bad, he had seen countless divine arts, so he naturally would not be shocked. What surprised him was that Feng Qingshan was actually able to create such a divine art that wasn't weaker than the myriad worlds immortal chapter at the chaotic essence realm. The younger generation would truly surpass the older. With the completion of the immortal chapter, a mysterious aura was born in an instant. Then, the vast text suddenly shrunk into a ball and fell into the gate of heaven. It flowed down the sea of consciousness, passed through the 12 floors, entered the internal organs, and spread to the limbs and bones. Rumble. Thunder rumbled. Fang Qingshan's body shook. A layer of densely packed golden seal characters appeared on his bones. They were like dragons and snakes, majestic and majestic. His physical body, magic power, primordial spirit, laws, true spirit, and so on were all transformed into the power of immortality. This was the feedback of the divine art. In an instant, heavenly sounds rang out again. Golden lotuses bloomed, and a strange fragrance filled the air. This time, the Tao lecture lasted for 100 years before it ended. Although it was only 100 years, and normally it wasn't enough for everyone to take a nap, it had been a long time. Anyway, everyone had gained a lot. When the Sword Emperor of the Storm's voice stopped, it signaled the end of the Tao lecture. Fellow friends, you are all people with great fortune and exceptional aptitudes. I am merely taking a step ahead. I hope that this trip will be of some help to all of you. If there are any benefits, it can be considered as a deed of merit. However, I hope that one day, all of you will be able to sit down and discuss Tao with me. After the Tao lecture, the Sword Emperor of the Storm didn't leave immediately. He looked at the 3 god emperors who were about to break through for a moment, and then at the oddities like Fang Qingshan before encouraging them. With that, a bright light shone and turned into a sword light that shot into the sky. In the next instant, the Sword Emperor of the Storm disappeared. Although the Sword Emperor of the Storm disappeared, he didn't chase everyone out of Fuyuan Mountain immediately. Everyone hurriedly bowed and thanked him before sitting down cross-legged and immersing themselves in the great Tao. No one was willing to leave at this moment, and Fang Qingshan was an exception. Firstly, although the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture had ended, Fuyuan Mountain was still filled with the aura of the great Tao. Secondly, after the Tao lecture, everyone was still immersed in the great Tao, reminiscing and consolidating what they had learned. If they were to leave just like that, they might lose part of their inspiration. The Sword Emperor of the Storm naturally knew this, so he didn't send everyone out immediately. Instead, he deliberately gave them some time to digest what he had learned. While the aura was still lingering, everyone naturally wanted to seize every second to continue comprehending and consolidating what they had learned from the Tao lecture. If they could still remember and digest it, it would be a blessing from the heavens. In the blink of an eye, another half a month had passed. Finally, the aura around the Tao lecture stage weakened bit by bit and gradually disappeared. Everyone had basically digested it. Those who couldn't digest it didn't have a right opportunity, so they woke up one after another and left Fuyuan Mountain. It's a pity. Just a little bit more, and my cultivation could have increased by another level. Someone said it was a pity, but there was actually a lot of excitement in their words. Everyone had benefited a lot from the Tao lecture, and it had saved them at least 10,000 years, or even 1,000,000 years of comprehension. However, due to the difference in karmic luck, cultivation, knowledge, foundation, fortune, aptitude, and so on, the level of one's harvest within the same 100 years would be different, and there would be high and low levels. But even those who had the least harvest had increased their cultivation by 1 level. Their foundation had been consolidated, and their foundation had been strengthened. This was basically talking about the immortal realm. The God Emperor realm wasn't a realm that could be increased by 1 Tao lecture. After all, at their level, the difficulty of breaking through a small realm was definitely higher than breaking through a major realm. As for the mixed essence realm, the harvest seemed to be very small, but that was because of the existence of the celestial decay, 5, and the immortal tribulation. However, it was conceivable that among them, those who could only undergo the intermediate thunder tribulation would definitely undergo the advanced thunder tribulation. Those who underwent the advanced thunder tribulation would have more tribulations, and it might even become the peak thunder tribulation. And once they succeeded, their cultivation wouldn't just be at the early stage of the immortal realm. Chapter 1395. Congratulations, Feng Taoist. Congratulations, Feng Taoist. Fluttering Snow Palace's Lang Qinli was very close to Fang Qingshan. After comprehending, He looked at the substantial pressure on Fang Qingshan with envy and jealousy. He hadn't transcended the immortal tribulation yet. Now, everything in his body had transformed into immortal power. He was no different from an ordinary immortal realm cultivator. Once he transcended the tribulation successfully, he would jump 3 levels and rise rapidly, saving a lot of time. Most importantly, his cultivation foundation wouldn't be illusory at all. One step ahead, every step ahead. As for whether he could transcend it, the other primordial chaos realm cultivators present probably couldn't transcend it. Fang Qingshan probably wouldn't have any accidents. Previously, he had seen and felt the perfection of the All Heavens Tao Verification Art Immortal section with his own eyes because he was very close. How could someone who could create such a divine technique at the primordial chaos realm be stopped by a mere immortal tribulation? Same to you, Fang Qingshan said with a smile. It was indeed a joyous occasion. The Sword Emperor of the Storm's sword discussion had benefited Fang Qingshan a lot because he had made ample preparations and gained a lot from Providence. However, those who could come here weren't easy to deal with. Even if they couldn't compare to Fang Qingshan, their gains wouldn't be small. Proficient in Tao and sincere to oneself. According to Fang Qingshan's observation, although Lang Qianli didn't create a technique like him, his gains might not be less than Fang Qingshan's. After all, their cultivation levels were still at the primordial chaos realm. The gap between them was still rather small. To really widen the gap, they would probably have to wait until the immortal and God Emperor realms. If Fang Qingshan didn't rely on the timeless arc, he might be able to win against Lang Qianli, but it would probably take some effort. After all, Lang Qianli was a disciple of Fluttering Snow Palace. Currently, Fluttering Snow Palace's strength and influence were above the Dao sect. Even though the Dao preaching of the Sword Emperor of the Storm was impressive, it was merely an opportunity for them. This was because their bodies, the Drifting Snow Palace, and the Dao sect were all treasures. The Dao preaching of the Sword Emperor of the Storm would at most allow them to take a shortcut, giving them a key to open a treasure trove. After chatting for a while, they agreed to discuss the Dao again after their cultivation base reached the immortal realm. That day was not far away for them. Since their cultivation levels had reached the peak primordial chaos, they could break through to the immortal realm anytime and anywhere. The success rate was almost 100%. As for the distance and opportunity, the Dao sect's inner disciple competition was about to begin. As an inner disciple of the Drifting Snow Palace, Lang Qianli would also be there to watch the competition. At that time, he would be able to watch the competition and discuss Dao at the same time. This was because Mount Fuyuan did not have a fixed location. Apart from stopping for a moment or two during the sermon, it was constantly moving. Therefore, at this moment, the Mountain of Fortune had long since left its original location and entered into an unknown space. It would be fine if they were in the boundless void, a safe place in the myriad heavens and myriad worlds. It wouldn't matter even if they were further away. However, if they were to enter a dangerous place or a natural disaster for a divine emperor, the immortal realm was still fine. If nothing went wrong, even if they were to be in a difficult situation, it wouldn't be a problem for them to stay alive. However, for people in the primordial chaos realm, it wouldn't be so good. Fortunately, the Sword Emperor of the Storm had already considered this. The Sword Emperor of the Storm was responsible for sending the people who came through the Sword Token of the Storm back the way they came. As for the others, they would be sent back to the original location of Mount Fuyuan. Therefore, Fang Qingshan and Jiang Overlord felt dizzy just like when they first arrived. When they opened their eyes again, they had already returned to their own dojo in the Dao sect. However, before they could come back to their senses and let out a sigh, the Divine Emperor's remarkable ability was once again rendered defenseless. They appeared in a foreign place with the world spinning around them. They were stared at by a group of people as if they were looking at a mirror, giving Fang Qingshan a great shock. Those who did not know better would have thought that they had fallen into a trap. Fortunately, he hadn't taken out the timeless arc to attack or escaped with the chessboard of heavens. However, he quickly calmed down because Jiang Overlord had spoken. Fang Qingshan also saw two familiar faces, Elder Zue and Elder Tan. It turned out that these people were actually the Dao Will sect's bigwigs, Grand Elder, sect leader, and elders with real power, etc. The reason why they were gathered here was naturally because Fang Qingshan and Elder Tan had participated in the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Dao preaching. This was also great news for the Dao Will sect, especially for Jiang Overlord, who was an outstanding figure among the true inheritors. His cultivation had already reached the peak of the immortal realm. After this, the Dao Will sect would probably have another divine emperor, which was really worthy of celebration. As for Fang Qingshan, he was also not bad. He was the owner of the Timeless Ark, and his cultivation had also reached the peak of the primordial chaos realm. Once he broke through to the immortal realm, he would be another inheritor. After asking a few questions and encouraging them, he finally let them go. In this regard, Fang Qingshan felt a little regretful and disappointed. He had originally thought that the sect would give them some rewards and benefits, but he didn't expect that they would be sent away without anything. Fortunately, Fang Qingshan had a good temperament and didn't care too much about it. It was his luck to get it, but it was his fate to lose it. Didn't he come here when there was no sect in the past? Moreover, it wasn't that the Dao Will sect didn't value him. Not long after he returned to the dojo, Jiang Overlord sent a message. The reason why he wasn't rewarded now was actually for his own good. Firstly, Fang Qingshan had just joined the sect, so it was not a blessing in disguise. He didn't make any contributions to the sect, nor did he display the strength that he should have. A small reward would be useless, but a big reward would cause objections. Secondly, his cultivation seemed to be at the primordial chaos realm. Even if he was rewarded, it wouldn't exceed his realm by too much. Once his cultivation broke through, these rewards would be of little value. Therefore, the sect was actually waiting because his cultivation had reached the point where he had no choice but to break through. Moreover, the inter-sect disciple competition was imminent. Once Fang Qingshan's cultivation broke through to the immortal realm, according to everyone's deduction, it was almost certain that he would become one of the top 10 inter-sect disciples. If that was the case, giving out rewards would be more open and justifiable. There wouldn't be any noise in the sect, and it would help the sect's harmony. As for Fang Qingshan, he would receive more and more rewards when the time came. Therefore, Fang Qingshan's current priority was to transcend the tribulation. Tribulation transcendence. This was a matter that needed to be carefully considered. This was because tribulations didn't just include the heavenly tribulation, but also the earthly tribulation and the human tribulation. Why was it difficult for itinerant cultivators? Other than resources, there were also such situations. Tribulation transcendence. This was a high-risk moment. No one might destroy it during tribulation transcendence. But what about after tribulation transcendence? It was fine if the tribulation transcendence failed, but if it succeeded, one would fall into a state of weakness. Once someone took advantage of the situation, one would be doomed eternally. Itinerant cultivators didn't have anyone to protect them, so they usually found secluded places to undergo tribulation transcendence. Chapter 1396. In order to prevent being attacked by enemies during the tribulation transcendence, an itinerant cultivator would first need to find a secluded place. If the conditions were right, they could invite one or two trustworthy friends or disciples to protect them. However, in general, they would be in a bad mood and tread on thin ice. After all, it was not easy to find a truly remote place that was suitable for tribulation transcendence. Moreover, one could only be a thief for 1,000 days, not a thief for 1,000 days. If there was really an enemy hiding in the dark, there might be a loophole. As for those who could truly be trusted and could protect them, there were even fewer of them for itinerant cultivators. However, when it came to Fang Qingshan, there was obviously no need to consider these things. That was because the various problems that itinerant cultivators needed to consider and worry about were not a problem for him. Putting aside whether he would suffer from the side effects of the tribulation transcendence and be in a weak state, he had his clone, Mosquito Dowrin, so he did not lack people to protect him. This was when he was fighting alone. Now that he had joined the Tao Will sect, there was even less of a need to consider these problems. The Tao Will sect specially opened up a world for its disciples to undergo tribulation transcendence. There was no need to worry about the human tribulation transcendence in the Tao Will sect's territory. If one was attacked by outsiders in the Tao Will sect's territory, it could only be said that one was destined to suffer such a tribulation. After Fong Qingshan adjusted his breathing for 2 more days, he bathed and changed his clothes. After recovering to his best state, he stated that he wanted to undergo the tribulation transcendence and was brought to a tribulation transcendence domain. This was a desolation world called the Tribulation Realm. It was the exclusive place for Tao Will sect's primordial chaos cultivators to break through to the immortal realm. The entire world had been set up into a huge array, in the sky, on the ground, and underground. All of them were enveloped within. Just like the desolation world of Pangu, there was the Jot Eon star in the sky, the 5 guardian arrays on the ground, and the Nether Blood Sea and the 6 paths of reincarnation array on the ground. Moreover, the 3 spirit arrays were a trinity, organically fusing into a peerless spirit array. There were 2 reasons for setting up this array. One was to prevent people from disturbing the tribulation transcendence. As the saying goes, even a wise man would make a mistake. Although this was the core area of the Tao Will sect, there was no guarantee that no accidents would happen. After all, it was better to be safe than sorry. Perhaps there were scum, spies, or enemies who would become mortal enemies with the person who was going through the tribulation. Secondly, it was to protect the person undergoing the tribulation. However, what he was guarding against was not the human tribulation, but the heavenly tribulation, the lightning tribulation. Going through the heavenly tribulation was a high-risk thing. Not everyone could be as 100% sure as Fong Qingshan. If that was the case, there wouldn't be people like Uncle Wang, who was by Jiang Mingyue's side. Although it was forbidden to interfere with the tribulations of others, it would cause unforeseen events. However, that was only during the process of transcending the tribulation. The preparations for transcending the heavenly tribulation were obviously not included in this list. The purpose of this formation was to prevent the person undergoing the tribulation from activating it when they ran into danger, to fight for a chance of survival. However, the will of the heavens could not be deceived. After all, this formation was not set up by him. Therefore, once they used it, although they might be able to fight for a chance of survival, the rewards after the tribulation would be greatly reduced. However, a bad life was better than a good death. If one's strength was truly insufficient to transcend the heavenly tribulation, between being reduced to ashes and having their rewards greatly reduced, there was no doubt that they would choose the latter. After all, if they were alive, there was still a chance to change. If they were dead, everything would be over. This was where the foundation of a sect lied. It was obvious that itinerant cultivators would not have such an opportunity. To them, it was fine if they passed the tribulation, but if they didn't, they would die. Obviously, Fong Qingshan did not need to activate the formation. Everything was ready except for the crucial moment. Fong Qingshan was already prepared. Therefore, the moment he arrived, he did not hesitate at all and directly released his aura. However, Fong Qingshan opened his eyes, and 2 rays of light shot out. In his eyes, there were alternating black and white colors. Time and space rotated, and a chaotic world appeared in the sky like the sun and moon. His aura burst out, and essence chi rose into the sky, stirring the wind and clouds. His chi and blood flowed, and his dermic powers surged like a deafening river. This was because Fong Qingshan was a triple cultivator of dermic powers, physical body, and primordial spirit. In addition, the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture had perfected the immortal chapter of the All Heavens Tao verification technique in advance. His dermic powers, primordial spirit, and physical body had all entered the immortal realm in advance. Therefore, the moment he released his aura, it was vast and mighty, and it covered the entire sky and earth. Rumble. The sound became louder and louder. At the start, it was like a dragon roaring in the 9 heavens. In the end, it even spread to the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Thick, deep, mysterious, and vast. It was endless, and it covered the entire sky and earth. If an ordinary immortal realm person stood beside him, they would feel like they were carrying the blue sky on their back. It would be difficult for them to move or breathe. At the same time, because of the eternal Tao aura, as he released his aura, the entire sky seemed to be dyed with a layer of green lotus chi, an extremely dense fragrance, like that of an old cellar, condensed and did not dissipate. The mountains were washed by it, and it was as if they were drunk. They had long known that Feng Qingshan was not simple. After all, he was the master of the timeless arc and had listened to the Sword Emperor of the Storm's Tao lecture. However, when the Dao sect's upper echelons saw Feng Qingshan make a move, they could not help but be shocked by his aura. It wasn't as if they hadn't seen the world. The Dao sect had countless geniuses. However, they had never seen someone like Feng Qingshan. Without going through the tribulation, he was immortal. Once he passed the tribulation, there were very few true disciples who could compare to him, let alone inner-sect disciples. Back then, when Jiang Overlord was at this realm, he was far inferior to Feng Qingshan. If Jiang Overlord had not obtained the sword token of the storm this time, he would not have been able to listen to the lecture. Now that he was on the verge of a breakthrough, it was possible that Feng Qingshan would overtake him. Great, great, great. The heavens are really blessing the Tao sect. When the Tao sect's upper echelon saw this scene, they trembled with excitement. It was the same as when Jiang Overlord found out that Feng Qingshan was an emperor-level genius. They had fought for the Tao sect all their lives and witnessed the Tao sect's rise and fall. Now that the Tao sect had a chance to rise again, they were naturally ecstatic. Of course, the most excited person was Elder Zhe. After all, he had a discerning eye for heroes and had discovered Feng Qingshan in advance and given him help. Now that he saw Feng Qingshan erupt, he was naturally comforted. Feng Qingshan obviously did not know about the Tao sect's excitement. Even if he knew, he would not care too much. Right now, he was wholeheartedly focused on transcending the tribulation. Although he was 100% confident, a lion would still use its full strength to capture a rabbit, so he didn't let his guard down at all. The moment Feng Qingshan released his aura, it seemed to be a signal. In the next moment, the immortal tribulation arrived. Chapter 1397. The immortal tribulation was divided into 2 parts. The first was the heavenly decay, followed by the lightning tribulation. At this moment, the first to descend was naturally the heavenly decay. However, there were no signs. The weather in June and the child's face changed without warning. Endless black mist circled above the tribulation realm. Instantly, black clouds covered the sky and the earth, causing the entire world to darken. A nauseating aura surged over. The black aura was none other than the tribulation chi, the baleful aura, and the heavenly decay. This thing was even more terrifying than negative karma. They were afraid of being contaminated by even the slightest bit. Even the Tao sect's upper echelons, who had successfully transcended the tribulation and broken through to the God Emperor stage, could not help but frown when they saw the tribulation chi. It was not that they were afraid, but the commotion seemed a little too big. In a split second, the power of the Great Tribulation gathered from the boundless space-time, vaguely turning into chains. The quantity and quality were more than 10 times that of ordinary people transcending the tribulation. This is not a good start. Everyone sighed inwardly and began to worry for Feng Qingshan. One could tell the whole picture by looking at one spot. Although Feng Qingshan was powerful, the tribulation was not that easy to transcend. There was not much time for everyone to think. From the moment Feng Qingshan released his aura to the gathering of the tribulation chi, a bone-chilling aura suddenly smashed down from the sky. It was just a matter of the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint. It was a ball of black aura formed by the heavenly decay. It was cold, rotten, and horrifying. It turned into a cold and ferocious chain that fell towards Fang Qingshan with a thick, rotten aura. He could not avoid it and was instantly locked in place, making it impossible for him to struggle. Then, Fang Qingshan's body began to decay at a speed visible to the naked eye. Even though he seemed to have an immortal body, magic power, and primordial spirit, he still could not resist the invasion of this power without transcending the heavenly decay and the lightning tribulation. As time slowly passed, Fang Qingshan's body gradually emitted a decaying aura. An unpleasant stench and filth emerged from his body. The sun was setting in the west, and he was on his last breath. Even the immortal substance on his body began to decay. In the face of such a situation, Fang Qingshan did not seem anxious at all. It was as if he was not the one undergoing the tribulation, and the one being hurt was not him. He did not summon merit, the red lotus of hellfire, or weaken the secret technique to avoid the 5 signs of Deva. Instead, he quietly watched as the heavenly decay chi invaded his body. Previously, it was mentioned that there were 2 ways to extinguish the karmic fire. One was to use merit to offset it, and the other was to use one's will to obliterate it. Now, that Fang Qingshan was facing the Deva Decay 5, he planned to use his will to try it out. It was not that he really thought that he could use his will to destroy the Deva Decay, but he wanted to use the Deva Decay to sharpen his will. As the saying goes, there's always great terror between life and death. A great tribulation was also a great opportunity. However, he wanted to seize every opportunity to improve himself. In the end, it was too late. Only then did Fang Qingshan display his own technique. I'm the only one in the heavens, eternal and undying. All evils vanquish, all tribulations invade. Fang Qingshan exclaimed softly, and a pool of lightning appeared behind his head. The pool of lightning was in the shape of a lotus flower, and there were thunder, Tao runes engraved on it. There were pictures of birds and beasts, as well as colorful immortal spirits. This item was none other than the eternal lightning pool that had evolved from the eternal lotus seed. The eternal true spirit and the eternal lotus seed were descendants of the everlasting lotus. They were born with eternal Tao runes, just like the chaos bell and the heaven and earth black and yellow pagoda. At first, Fang Qingshan wanted to learn from Yang Mei and cultivate a top-notch technique to weaken the 5 signs of Deva like the others. However, after thinking about it, he realized that he was holding a golden rice bowl and begging for food. With the eternal lotus seed, there was no need to learn other cultivation techniques. As expected, as soon as the pool of lightning appeared, it released a devouring force that swept over Fang Qingshan's body like the autumn wind sweeping away fallen leaves. Then, the 5 signs of Deva that were raging in Fang Qingshan's body actually disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few breaths, all the 5 signs of Deva in Fang Qingshan's body dissipated completely. Then, Fang Qingshan's body, which was riddled with holes, returned to its original state within a few breaths. He no longer looked like he was on the brink of death before. It was simply too easy. As such, the 5 signs of Deva was easily passed. Not only that, but Fang Qingshan also took the opportunity to temper his will. Once the 5 signs of Deva was over, the thunder tribulation arrived. Rumble. In the blink of an eye, a strong wind blew in the clear sky like a doomsday storm. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds covered the city, stacking like dragon scales, and a vast and majestic power descended. Upon closer inspection, streaks of lightning that were even darker than the black clouds were as thick as buckets. They turned into dragons and snakes that swam through the sky. They were magnificent and unstoppable. Boom! The deafening sound shook the sky and instantly caused the void to tremble. It was really a bolt from the blue. Before it landed, the might alone was enough to make many peak primordial chaos experts retreat and shrink back. You're really aggressive. You just won't give up on killing me. Fang Qingshan raised his head and looked at the descending thunderbolts in the sky. The destructive power was so dense that it was almost tangible. He could not help but sigh in his heart. However, even so, in the face of this violent, rampaging, crazy, and destructive lightning, it was impossible for it to escape. Fang Qingshan was neither shocked nor afraid, neither sad nor happy. Counter soldiers with arms and water with earth. This was because of the accumulation from before, as well as the sharpening of the Deva's 5 signs after listening to the Tao, which allowed him to obtain a state of mind that could not be shaken even if the sky collapsed. At the same time, it was naturally because his strength was sufficient to deal with all of this. So Fang Qingshan seemed to be in no hurry, and it was even better than taking a leisurely stroll in a courtyard. Boom! It was no different from the previous Deva's 5 signs, which did not give Fang Qingshan much time to prepare and adapt. Basically, as soon as the wind blew and the thunderbolts moved, the tribulation thunder fell. It was so fast that people could not react. There were so many that there was nothing but thunderbolts in one's eyes. The power was so great that it seemed to imprison people on the spot. However, the dark clouds were like a flood that had opened the floodgates. Countless thunderbolts were released. Anyway, there were no less than tens of thousands of them. Once they appeared, they were like the sun rising from the east, shining brightly and illuminating the entire world. Tens of thousands of thunderbolts. Those who did not know would think that it was a heavy rain. It poured down densely and covered the sky and earth. It was like a river flowing backward and rolling up a curtain of beads. The momentum was so great that it seemed like the end of the world. Even though they were very far away, one could still smell the dangerous aura. It would not stop until one of them died. Compared to Yang Mei's high-level tribulation thunder, it was more than 10 times more powerful. Even the top-level tribulation thunder that Mosquito Dowrin had gone through seemed to be a little weaker than this. After all, most people would go through tribulation thunder one by one, or a few, or even several. For example, Yang Mei, those who were unlucky or had top-level tribulation thunder might have dozens or even hundreds of them. For example, Mosquito Dowrin. However, when it came to Fang Qingshan, good Lord, how was this an immortal tribulation? This was simply an immortal tribulation that would not stop until one of them died. Chapter 1398. Come on. In the face of the dazzling thunderbolts descending from the sky like thousands of soldiers and horses, Fang Qingshan was neither shocked nor afraid. He was carefree as he stood quietly in the middle of the tribulation realm. Vast dermic powers surged as he faced the oncoming thunderbolt heavenly tribulation. Although the first wave of thunderbolts was huge, it was just the power of thunderbolts. The thunderbolts struck down. The thunderbolts intertwined, forming a curtain that was cold and threatening. The dull sound was like the drum of 10,000 beasts breaking through the formation. It was deafening, and every word seemed to strike one's heart. It was very powerful. Needless to say, a peak primordial chaos like Uncle Wong would probably be seriously injured and dying even if he used all his means in the face of this wave of thunderbolts. If he was unlucky, he would be turned into ashes. Top-notch thunder tribulation. Upon seeing this scene, the Dao Will Sect's upper echelons were really surprised and delighted. Ever since they knew that Fang Qingshan was the owner of the Timeless Ark, participated in the Tao preaching of the Sword Emperor of the Storm, and even created his own technique, Jiang Overlord had also said that he was no match for him. Even if they didn't know that he was an Emperor-class genius with a purple title, Fang Qingshan already had a mark in everyone's hearts. Therefore, this time when he was undergoing tribulation transcendence, the Grand Elder, Sect Master, and elders with real power were all focused on him. Then, they first saw the Deva decay that was 10 times more than others in the current top-notch thunder tribulation. Naturally, they were happy because there would be many benefits after transcending it. Naturally, they were shocked because the tribulation was not easy to transcend, and they were worried for Fang Qingshan. After all, they had only heard rumors and didn't know much about Fang Qingshan's true strength. However, if it had been them in the past, or with their own knowledge, they would probably have been in trouble. What made them even more frightened was that Fang Qingshan actually didn't use any means in the face of the thunderbolts and just let them hit him. The upper echelons were so worried that their hearts almost jumped out of their throats. When others transcended tribulation, which one of them didn't tremble with fear as if they were walking on thin ice. Fang Qingshan, on the other hand, actually had the mind to borrow the power of lightning to temper his body in the face of such a powerful lightning tribulation. It was unknown whether he was a newborn calf that was not afraid of a tiger, or he did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. Naturally, Fang Qingshan didn't know about this. Even if he knew, he wouldn't care. How could other people's thoughts affect his outcome? Moreover, although this wave of lightning was ferocious and intimidating, it was nothing to Fang Qingshan. After all, he was not an ordinary peak primordial chaos expert. Mosquito Dowrin had already overcome a lightning tribulation. Furthermore, it was a top-notch lightning tribulation. Although it could not be compared to the one he was facing now, it could still be said that he had experienced it himself. Moreover, he hadn't broken through yet. Before the lecture, he wasn't weaker than the ordinary early-stage Immortal Realm experts. After the lecture, his body, power, and primordial spirit had all transformed into the immortal substance. In this way, the lightning tribulation that others were worried about was just a strong enemy to him. Although he was cautious, he only looked down on the enemy strategically and paid attention to the enemy tactically. Therefore, in the face of this wave of lightning tribulation, Fang Qingshan didn't even use his natal mystical power, let alone the timeless arc and the reincarnation mirror. Just like when Yang Mei had transcended the tribulation, Fang Qingshan planned to rely on his body to resist it first. This way, he could also take the opportunity to temper his body, which was similar to using the Deva Decay 5 to temper his willpower. This was not arrogance, but confidence. After all, Fang Qingshan's body was already not weaker than the defense of the Cosmic Cauldron. Rumble. Even though the thunderbolts were just pure thunderbolts and did not evolve into any elemental thunderbolts, weapons, or even living beings, the destructive power contained within them was still not to be underestimated. In an instant, it enveloped Fang Qingshan and surged towards him from all directions, as if it was trying to crush him into dust. Because Fang Qingshan wanted to borrow the lightning tribulation to temper his body, other than his physical strength, he restrained all other powers. Although his physical strength was extraordinary and he had achieved the immortal body, this lightning tribulation wasn't easy to deal with. In an instant, Fang Qingshan felt a heart-wrenching pain from his toes to the top of his skull and from his skin to his bones. It had been so many years since Fang Qingshan had felt such pain. He wasn't scared. Instead, he was happy. What cultivators feared the most was a pool of stagnant water. To be able to change, even if it was painful, it was good. Moreover, only those who had suffered the most could become a best. Fang Qingshan formed a seal with his hands and formed the eternal seal while visualizing the great Tao green lotus diagram in his mind. In an instant, Fang Qingshan's body seemed to have turned into a battlefield. The lightning tribulation was destroying his body, but after it was destroyed, wisps of golden light came out of nowhere and continuously repaired his damaged body. It was an extremely special power. Wherever the golden light passed, Fang Qingshan could feel his muscles, bones, and even blood gradually heating up, as if they were being tempered in a furnace. This power was none other than the immortal body that Fang Qingshan had accumulated in his body. It was a combination of the immortal body, the eternal Taoist aura, and the power of creation in the lightning tribulation. As long as the lightning tribulation didn't destroy Fang Qingshan in an instant, it had the eternal Taoist aura, the immortal body, and the power of creation in the lightning tribulation. He would be able to repair it very quickly. One destroyed, one repaired. Without destruction, there can be no construction. Nobody knew how much time had passed. Perhaps it was an instant, or perhaps it was a moment. After the lightning tribulation dissipated, not only did Fang Qingshan's body not suffer any injuries, but his physical body was like ice and jade-like bones, and his glass golden body was even more powerful. Seeing this scene, the Tao Will Sect's upper echelons naturally heaved a sigh of relief. While exclaiming at Fang Qingshan's courage, they couldn't help but be secretly happy. First, it was the heavenly decay, which was 10 times stronger than normal people. However, Fang Qingshan easily passed through it. Now, the lightning tribulation, which was above the ordinary lightning tribulation, including spiritual treasures, divine abilities, and nomological laws, had passed through the lightning tribulation with just his physical body without using any tricks. At the same time, he had used the lightning tribulation to temper his body and reach a higher level. How could the Tao Will Sect's elders not be happy? However, they quickly calmed down because the next wave of lightning tribulation had fallen. Rumble. The lightning tribulation, which was denser and thicker than before, poured down in torrents. Everyone couldn't help but feel nervous. They were confused because they were too concerned. Because the Tao Will Sect finally had a top seedling, they were afraid that an accident would happen. Therefore, it was inevitable that they would be blinded by the situation. Although Fang Qingshan was the real person involved, he was much more relaxed than everyone else. Although the second wave of lightning tribulation was more ferocious than the first wave, it was only an increase in quantity. The qualitative transformation was not obvious. Therefore, what did Fang Qingshan have to be afraid of? Not only was Fang Qingshan not afraid, but he was also eager to try. After all, the lightning tribulation was a death tribulation for others, but it was an opportunity for him. Since it was an opportunity, he naturally couldn't let it go. Chapter 1399. Generally speaking, whether it was to test the masses, to show that cultivation wasn't easy and the Great Tao was difficult, or to limit the number of cultivators. After all, as long as the saints didn't die, the bandits wouldn't stop. Cultivators were stealing heaven's secrets and going against the heavens. Once there were too many cultivators, the burden on the heavens would be too heavy and a great tribulation would descend, or for other reasons. Once one cultivated to a certain level, a lightning tribulation would descend. However, there were two sides to the same coin. Tribulation wasn't a bad thing. After all, a tribulation was also an opportunity. Hong Jun had survived the demonic Tao tribulation, so he had a meteoric rise and became a sage. Sun Wukong passed the journey to the West tribulation and became a peak demi-saint from Golden Immortal. Fang Qingshan didn't pass the tribulation before. Although his cultivation, body, primordial spirit, and spirit had all transformed into immortal substance, he still couldn't resist the celestial decay. Therefore, he had to pass this tribulation whether he wanted to or not. Of course, he didn't have to pass it, but his cultivation wouldn't advance. For someone who was dedicated to the Great Tao, the loss outweighed the gain. Generally speaking, before primordial chaos, one would become an immortal, break through Golden Immortal, or Zenith Heaven. There would be a lightning tribulation. Of course, this didn't mean that it only existed at this specific time and not at other times. It might exist at other times, but it had to exist at this specific time. After primordial chaos, there would be a lightning tribulation test for every breakthrough of a major realm. For example, primordial chaos, immortal, God Emperor, or even God Emperor. Both of them came from the same source, but they had different origins. They were exactly the same. They all had to go through the 9-9 lightning tribulation. However, due to the difference in cultivation, the host was different. The former had to go through the 9-9 heavenly tribulation, and the host was Hong Jun Tiandao. After primordial chaos, the host became the Great Tao. The 9-9 Tao tribulation was a test of the Great Tao. After primordial chaos, most people had broken free from the shackles of Hong Jun Tiandao, and their power belonged to themselves. Therefore, the Great Tao had to be in charge. God Emperor and God Emperor tribulations were too far away for Fang Qingshan, so he didn't mention them for now. The immortal tribulation required 3 Tao tribulations. Of course, this was a normal situation, which meant that most people were like this, but there were also exceptions. For example, When Yang Mei was going through his immortal tribulation, he was going through 3 Dao tribulations, which was a high-level lightning tribulation. However, when Mosquito Daoran was going through his lightning tribulation, he was going through a peak-level lightning tribulation, which was 5 Dao tribulations. Firstly, Mosquito Daoran's talent was above Yang Mei's. After all, regardless of whether Mosquito Daoran was really the legendary primordial beast, just the fact that he didn't need to comprehend the great Tao and could continuously improve by devouring resources was enough to shame others. Of course, in addition to this kind of talent that would incur the jealousy of the heavens, there were 2 other kinds of existences that could also cause the lightning tribulation to mutate. The first was if someone interfered during the tribulation. Regardless of whether they had good or bad intentions, the lightning tribulation would change, and the tribulation would not rest until one of them died. The other was to kill too much, and the evil aura and negative karma in one's body would be too deep, to the point that even the heavens would be enraged, and even the great Tao would not be able to tolerate it. The reason why Mosquito Daoran was going through the 5 Dao tribulations was not without this reason. After all, he had devoured and killed many living beings. However, generally speaking, those he killed were those who deserved to be killed, or those who had karma with him. He didn't kill the innocent. Moreover, he was born from the filthy blood sea, and he had the red lotus of fire, so his negative karma was not obvious. Otherwise, he wouldn't be going through the 5 Dao tribulations, but the 9 Dao tribulations, and he wouldn't even be alive now. Of course, under normal circumstances, it was very rare for one's talent to be envied by the heavens, or to be enraged by the heavens. One might not even encounter one in hundreds of thousands or millions of years. However, one had appeared today. Not only was Feng Qingshan a purple title primordial chaos, but he was also a legendary emperor-level prodigy and a mutated master of the timeless Arkansas. He hadn't broken through to primordial chaos, but his entire body had transformed into an immortal, peerless genius. Therefore, his tribulation was also a top-level lightning tribulation, and it was above Mosquito Daoran's. It was the 6 Dao tribulations. The reason why it was above Mosquito Daoran was because Mosquito Daoran was his clone. However, although it was the 6 Dao tribulations, it was the top immortal tribulation in the universe. The evil Marquis, the blessed Buddhist saint, and the others' immortal tribulations were only at this level. But to Feng Qingshan, it was just SOSO. He didn't know how powerful the later tribulations were, but he had already experienced the earlier tribulations when Mosquito Daoran was going through them. At least before the 5 Dao tribulations, Feng Qingshan didn't care much. Needless to say, it was only the 9 Dao tribulations now. Therefore, he boldly used the power of the lightning tribulation to temper his body. If he could temper his body, break through the limit, and transform it into a second-grade supreme treasure, then his confidence in passing the tribulations would increase by another level. Therefore, although the 19 Dao tribulations fell one after another, each stronger than the one before, each stronger than the one before, and each stronger than the one before, each stronger than the one before. As a result, Feng Qingshan's body was now riddled with holes. His body, which was no less than a first-grade defensive supreme treasure, was now a skeleton. Moreover, the lightning tribulation continued to destroy the skeleton. Some of the bones were even charred, as if they couldn't bear the burden anymore. Fortunately, there was a pillar in Feng Qingshan's skeleton, just like the backbone of Pangu on Mount Buzhou. Inside the pillar were drops of crystal-clear bone marrow, engraved with eternal patterns, and emitting an eternal fragrance. Eternal divine marrow. This was the great treasure hidden in Feng Qingshan's body after he had enjoyed the eternal blessing time and time again. Every time he received the eternal blessing, drops of eternal divine marrow would be born continuously, and each drop would emit an eternal aura. It was because of this existence that Feng Qingshan's body could be subtly changed. As a result, the Sword Emperor of the Storm and the others could feel a stronger eternal Tao aura from him than many deity emperors and the master of the timeless Arkansas. Similarly, it was also because of this eternal divine marrow that Fang Qingshan dared to go all out and didn't care about consumption and recovery. It should be known that Yang Mei had done the same when he was going through the immortal tribulation. However, in order to recover and reduce consumption, he kept stuffing treasures into his mouth. In the end, the replenishment could not keep up with the consumption, and he almost failed at the last step. Now, Fang Qingshan was just sitting in the void, holding the eternal seal, observing the great path green lotus diagram, and circulating the everlasting scripture. No matter how the lightning tribulation strikes me, I will not move. This was the foundation. With the eternal divine marrow continuously replenishing the consumption and repairing the damage, Fang Qingshan's body, which had been destroyed by the lightning tribulation and tempered by the power of creation, was transforming into a second-grade supreme treasure step by step. Chapter 1400. 1-9 Tao Calamity. The first wave of thunder and lightning was like an army of thousands of men and horses. The second wave of thunder and lightning was twice as powerful as the first wave, and its quality was also improved by 3 levels. Its overall power had more than doubled. The third, fourth, and fifth wave of thunder and lightning was twice as powerful as the previous wave. At that moment, even Yang Mei's expression changed, let alone Uncle Wang, who was a primordial chaos expert. Fang Qingshan's body was getting better and worse. After it was broken, it was repaired, and after it was repaired, it was immediately destroyed again. Fang Qingshan's entire body seemed to be immersed in a sea of thunder and lightning. The thunder and lightning were sharp, and cold lights were flying everywhere. They were like sharp blades that wandered in Fang Qingshan's body. They rampaged and constantly polished his body and tempered his flesh and blood. Although there were many benefits, Fang Qingshan had to endure an extraordinary amount of pain. For the sake of benefits and maximizing the effect, Fang Qingshan restrained all other powers except for the power of his physical body. At the same time, in order to hone his willpower, he could not cut off his pain nerves. He could only passively endure this pain. For a moment, his entire body shook violently like a person with Parkinson's disease or a rattle drum that was being shaken very cheerfully. All kinds of torture, such as being cut into pieces, being torn apart by horses, and being burned alive, could not describe even a millionth of his pain. Even so, Fang Qingshan did not let out any miserable cries. His expression was calm and peaceful, as if he could not feel this pain at all. Bitterness was endless, but it was not endless. Only when the bitterness was over would one know that bitterness was merit. The cycle repeated. Fang Qingshan's skin, muscles, bones, acupoints, blood, meridians, internal organs, and so on were rapidly tempered in the midst of destruction and rebirth. They were transforming at the fastest speed, becoming tougher and tougher, and their functions becoming stronger and stronger. There were even traces of eternal Taoist runes that were unknowingly integrated into it. The 6th wave, the 7th wave, the 8th wave, and the 9th wave. The power of each wave doubled on the basis of the previous wave, and the pain increased exponentially. However, the rewards were also great. Fang Qingshan's body was finally refined by the thunder tribulation and repaired by the power of creation and the eternal Taoist rhyme. During the 8th wave of the thunder tribulation, he broke through the limit of a Grade 1 supreme treasure and transformed into a Grade 2 supreme treasure. Compared to the ferocious beast king of the 10,000 beast mountain, the 3-legged golden crow's body was not inferior. After all, the 3-legged golden crow had only tempered its wings and claws to level 2, while Fang Qingshan's entire body had transformed to level 2. Fang Qingshan's entire body was made of colored glass, emitting endless golden light. His blood flowed, and as his bones vibrated, there was a faint heavenly sound that was pleasing to the ears. There was also a hint of fragrance that penetrated his body, causing one's mind to tremble as if all the impurities in their body had been swept away, and they became 100 times more spirited. As a result, the final wave of the one of 9 Tao tribulations was almost as powerful as the 3 of 9 Tao tribulations. However, it was unable to do anything to Fang Qingshan. When it landed on his physical body, it gave off a metallic sound and burst into sparks that were as bright as fireworks. He was unscathed. Great, great. Not bad, not bad. I didn't expect him to survive such a powerful Tao tribulations with just his physical body. Not only did he survive, but he also used the thunder tribulations to temper his body. His physical body has improved by leaps and bounds. Looks like someone has already locked in the top 10 in the Inner Sanctum competition. It's not just the top 10. Even among the pro-disciples, I'm afraid there aren't many who can match up to him. The most important thing is still his potential. It's the 6 of 9 Tao tribulations. Even senior brother Jiang, Overlord, was far inferior to him back then. Although the place where Fang Qingshan went through the tribulations was the tribulation realm of the revolving door. However, because the heavenly deterioration 5 and the thunder tribulations caused such a huge commotion, the entire Tao sect was alarmed. Now, not only were the Supreme Elder, the sect leader, the elders with real power, but even the pro-disciples and Inner Sanctum disciples were all alarmed. Seeing that Fang Qingshan had survived the 9 Tao tribulations, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. But at the same time, their hearts became heavy. They heaved a sigh of relief, not because they were worried for Fang Qingshan or because they were worried about the country and the people. After all, they had not reached the position of the sect leader and the others. However, because they had placed themselves in the shoes of the tribulation lightning, they felt an unprecedented pressure, causing their hearts to feel heavy. In this regard, the Tao sect leader and the others were happy to see this happen. No matter what they did, they were afraid of a pool of stagnant water. It was the same for the disciples. If Fang Qingshan could bring an appropriate amount of pressure to them, it would be a good thing for the entire sect. This was because pressure was also motivation, and the Tao sect lacked such pressure and motivation. Speaking of pressure, the Tao sect was under a lot of pressure. Without a celestial emperor, the Tao sect had already holed up in the Tao chaotic world. However, the pressure was too great. It was so great that even the peak god emperors felt pressured and suffocated, let alone the disciples. They even felt despair. After all, it was really not that easy to break through to the celestial emperor realm. Generally speaking, which sect or family that could be called a major force did not have a handful of peak god emperors. In fact, many peak god emperors were the top god emperors below the celestial emperor realm. However, it was difficult to find one in 1,000 people who could really break through to the celestial emperor realm. Therefore, the pressure was too great. It would be good if one was not crushed to death, let alone turning it into motivation. However, Fang Qingshan was completely different. First, he was a disciple of the Tao sect, an internal member. Secondly, his cultivation level was only at the chaotic essence realm. After the thunder tribulation, he would only be at the immortal realm. Although he was powerful, he gave the disciples hope of catching up to him. At the same time, because of the 6 Tao tribulations and the timeless arc, he was not weaker than the top group of geniuses in the universe. The Tao sect is lucky. Yes, we should reward the Overlord and Mingyue when we get back. Yes, if it weren't for them, the Tao sect would have missed such a genius, a chance to rise. Rise resurgence. Regardless of what the others thought or how excited they were, Fang Qingshan was also a little excited at this moment. His body had completely broken through to the level 2 supreme treasure. Relying on this alone, he could beat ordinary early immortal realm experts. This was just the beginning. There were still 5 more Tao tribulations. To others, this was a tribulation, but to Fang Qingshan, it was an opportunity. Once his body broke through, the last wave of the 19 Tao tribulations did not hurt his body at all. One could imagine that the 29 Tao tribulations would not be difficult for him. He could rely on his body alone to get through it. Obviously, he did not only have a body, but also a divine ability, a spiritual treasure, and the timeless Arkansas. Since his body had broken through the shackles, the next step was the divine ability. A glimmer of light flashed in Feng Qingshan's eyes. Chapter 1401. After the end of the 19 tribulation, the next wave of lightning didn't strike immediately. First, it needed some time to accumulate and transform its power. After all, the power of the 29 tribulation was far greater than that of the 19 tribulation. Second, it was naturally because they were shocked by Feng Qingshan. They didn't expect that the most powerful wave of lightning from the 19 tribulation could leave Feng Qingshan unscathed. Although the Great Path wasn't a living creature, it had its own will. The stronger the person was, the stronger the lightning would be once it sensed it. To put it bluntly, it was like being envied by the heavens. Seeing the tribulation clouds getting thicker and thicker and the roaming lightning in the sky. Many inner disciples at the early stage of a mortal realm felt like their hearts were being squeezed. However, this time, no one was worried about Feng Qingshan. It wasn't that they didn't care, but they had a better understanding of his strength. After all, he had survived the last wave of lightning from the 19 tribulation with only his body. Unless it was someone who specialized in body refinement, or someone with talent in body constitution, many people at the late stage of a mortal realm didn't have such a body, let alone the early stage of a mortal realm. Therefore, no matter what happened later, at least the 29 tribulation couldn't do anything to Feng Qingshan. Regardless of what people thought, the lightning in the sky didn't make Feng Qingshan wait for long. Or rather, it didn't give the person who was going through the tribulation much time to catch his breath. In less than half an hour, the lightning had finished accumulating. Even though they knew that the 29 tribulation was far stronger than the 19 tribulation, they still couldn't help but gasp. Although the number and size of the lightning had returned to the first wave of the 19 tribulation. But in terms of quality, it was completely incomparable. No one had expected that the first wave of the 29 tribulation would have lightning of the attribute. Yes, this time the lightning was shining with golden light, releasing endless sharpness as if it wanted to pierce the sky. Metal element lightning. Not only that, but the lightning had also turned into sharp blades. When the two of them combined, their power was naturally higher. Buzz! A wave of sword cries rang out. At first, it was as soft as a mosquito and was almost undetectable. Then, it gradually grew louder and surged like a river. In the end, it seemed as if it had been completely unsheathed, and the sound shook the heavens. All of a sudden, streaks of sharp golden sword chi leaked down from the gaps of the rotating tribulation clouds. As soon as the sword chi appeared, all the swords below the second-grade supreme treasures started to tremble. It was as if they were paying homage to him. If it were any other element, I would still give you some leeway. But the 5 elements, lightning tribulation? Hee. When Feng Qingshan saw the lightning tribulation descending on his head, he was not shocked. Instead, he was delighted. Although he had transformed his origin law into reincarnation, he had started with the 5 elements. Furthermore, because the 5 elements had transformed into reincarnation, reincarnation could also be transformed into the 5 elements. In terms of understanding of the 5 elements, very few people at the same level as him could compare to him. In terms of dealing with it, it was even easier. After all, his origin law, the 5 elements bracelet, and the reincarnation ring were like the treasure fall coin, the wondrous tree of 7 treasures, the 5-color divine light, and the Vajra bracelet. They could change and were impervious to water and fire. They could attack all things and obtain all kinds of Dharma treasures. It was especially useful for Dharma treasures that could restrain the 5 elements. Tut! Feng Qingshan changed his hand seal and spat out thunder. With a thought, the clouds of the heaven gate rose and the Dharma power in his body surged. In the next moment, a colorful ring appeared. This item was both the 5 elements bracelet and the reincarnation ring. From time to time, 5 colors alternated or black and white. On it, there were strange patterns that looked like mountains, water, and swords. Occasionally, there were blazing flames, and the world was frozen. At other times, it seemed like time and space alternated, and life and death changed. However, whether it was the five elements of heaven and earth or the reincarnation of life and death, they formed a closed loop that was completely connected without any gaps. If one had amazing eyesight, they would be able to see 81 treasured mirrors or 49 spirit flags appearing on the bracelet from time to time. The mirror was the projection of the current reincarnation mirror, and the spirit flags were the portrayal of the five elements flags. In the middle of the closed loop, it seemed like the world had returned to ruins, or a black hole or wormhole. It was deep and bottomless. Whoosh! Just as the lightning was about to strike Fong Qing Shan, the reincarnation circle suddenly expanded, and a power that could devour the heavens and the earth erupted. In the next moment, space and time in the center of the circle distorted, and the lightning was sucked into it as soon as it landed. In an instant, there was a loud roar. The mirror on the reincarnation ring and the spirit flags shone brightly. The reincarnation ring also expanded and shrank, as if it could explode at any time. Swallow. In response, Fong Qingshan's expression did not change at all. Instead, it became even more intense. He activated his Dharma power and strengthened the reincarnation ring, making it even more powerful. In one breath, it devoured all the lightning. Swallow, swallow, swallow. The reincarnation ring rose higher and higher, and the devouring power became stronger. When the lightning entered, the two powers collided, and an unprecedented power erupted. As a result, Fong Qingshan's entire body seemed to have been struck by lightning. He trembled violently, and his face turned as white as paper. It was not that the power of the lightning was so great that Fong Qingshan could not bear it. Instead, it was the same as the previous 9 tribulations. Fong Qingshan was once again using the power of the lightning to temper himself. However, the previous time, he was tempering his body, and this time, he was tempering his techniques. Seeing this scene, everyone from the Tao sect was speechless. First tempering his body, then tempering his techniques. He was treating the tribulations as his own. In an instant, those who did not dare to go through the tribulations and those who had gone through the tribulations all expressed their envy, jealousy, and hatred. They really had different fates. The tribulations in the sky seemed to feel Fong Qingshan's provocation again. Others were afraid of him, but at most they were fearless. However, Fong Qingshan repeatedly used it to increase his strength. This was a slap in the face. Rumble. Therefore, in the next moment, the sky changed again. The black clouds that were already illuminated by the golden light suddenly descended with even more powerful forces. Swords, spears, halberds, axes, hooks, forks, and all kinds of weapons were present. Good heavens! It seemed that all the weapons in the world had gathered here. Before they were launched, just the sound of the weapons clashing was oppressive, as if a disaster was imminent. Seeing this, Fong Qingshan only snorted coldly. He did not show the slightest hint of fear and still used the reincarnation ring to face it. As mentioned before, if it was the tribulations of other attributes, he would be cautious. However, there was nothing to fear about the 5 elements. If he could not break the divine powers in one go, not only would he not be able to hurt Fong Qingshan, but it would also help him improve. Go! Fong Qingshan stretched out his hand, and the reincarnation ring on top of his head instantly fell into his palm. He gently turned it and threw it. The reincarnation ring released rays of colorful light and smashed towards the falling lightning at lightning speed. The reincarnation ring could not only collect the divine powers and spiritual treasures in the world, but its attack was also not weaker than that of others. Chapter 1402. Buzz. There was a deafening sound as if the heavens and earth were being split apart, causing the heavens to tremble. The next moment, countless space-time exploded. Even those who were countless light years away could not escape. Even the protective array formation of the entire tribulation realm shone brightly as it went all out. It was not because Fang Qingshan or the Tao Will sect felt that the lightning tribulation was too powerful, so they activated the array formation just in case. Instead, the origin will of the world felt threatened and automatically protected itself. One had to know that the tribulation realm was a place where the Tao Will sect's disciples underwent the immortal tribulation. Since its creation, there had been more than 10 million disciples undergoing the tribulation realm. They had encountered all sorts of geniuses, including many top-grade lightning tribulations. However, they had never encountered a second lightning tribulation that made the entire world feel threatened and had no choice but to activate the array formation to prevent it from being injured by the aftershocks. This was evident. Boom! Disregarding everything else, the clash between the Samsara ring and the lightning tribulation caused most of the Tao chaotic world to tremble. Then, the ferocious, armor-like lightning tribulation trembled violently. Most of them were directly smashed into pieces. The worst ones directly disintegrated into the power of lightning. As for the better ones, cracks began to spread at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was a ghastly sight. Devour! At the next moment, following Fang Qingshan's shout, the Samsara ring once again erupted with a devouring power that swept away all the power of lightning, like the autumn wind sweeping away the fallen leaves. In an instant, the clouds dispersed and the rain cleared up. The world became clear and space-time healed. If not for the tribulation clouds in the sky and the protective array formation of the tribulation realm still shining, it would have seemed as if nothing had happened. The world fell silent. Clearly, neither the tribulation clouds nor the spectators expected Fang Qingshan's divine powers to be so impressive. However, the origin will reacted in a breath's time. Rumble. The tribulation clouds raged and lightning surged. In an instant, the entire tribulation realm seemed to have turned into a lightning prison. He could no longer see the tribulation realm, nor could he see Fang Qingshan. He could only see lightning and hear the rumbling. The entire tribulation realm's protective array formation was crackling, as if it could not bear the burden. At the very center, there was only a huge vortex, a funnel. All of the energy was gathered there, spinning madly. Countless weapons turned into a huge tornado, revolving around Fang Qingshan. Boundless sharpness, boundless sharpness. It was like a vortex was exploding in the center. Fang Qingshan was in the center of the vortex, enduring the cleansing of the billions of sharp qi. Although they couldn't see Fang Qingshan, it wasn't hard to guess how terrifying Fang Qingshan was facing. This was because Fang Qingshan had provoked him again and again. Or rather, it was not a provocation, but he had easily passed the thunder trial. Not only did he not hurt him, but he had also become his stepping stone, which made the trial of Tao seem to be nothing. Therefore, the will of the Great Path had intentionally adjusted the difficulty. Although it was still 2 Tao tribulations, the quantity and quality had not changed. However, it was somewhat similar to Yang Mei's tribulation transcendence. A few waves of thunder tribulations had fallen together, which was why the thunder domain was formed. Gulp, gulp, gulp. Seeing this, Fang Qingshan didn't panic in the face of danger. He continued to control the reincarnation ring, which turned into a black hole that swallowed everything. However, it was obvious that the reincarnation ring alone was not enough to deal with these waves of thunder tribulations together. Fang Qingshan didn't dare to swallow all the thunder tribulations into the reincarnation ring in one go. After all, he wanted to temper the reincarnation ring, not destroy it. Furthermore, even if he wanted to swallow all the thunder tribulations in one go, given the current state of the reincarnation ring, he wouldn't be able to. Fortunately, his mystique wasn't limited to the reincarnation ring. Reincarnation all. Fang Qingshan first used the reincarnation all. However, the reincarnation all wasn't his main technique. Although this mystique was powerful and could break through a single point, just like Mosquito Doran's mosquito sting, it could break through everything. However, it was superior in single-target attacks. Against a group attack like this, It seemed a little powerless. However, Fang Qingshan still used it, not to defeat the enemy, but to use the thunder tribulations to temper his mystique. Apart from the reincarnation all, Fang Qingshan also used two mystiques. The first was the five elements diagram. It was now called the five elements reincarnation diagram, and it was the natural mystique that Fang Qingshan had condensed when he broke through to the grand heavenly immortal realm. Metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The five elements rotated on the outside, mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. Black and white alternated within. It hovered above Fang Qingshan's head like a canopy, blocking the reincarnation ring's attacks. Of course, it wasn't a head-on clash, but a borrowed force. The five elements revolved in a circle. Life, death, time, and space revolved in a circle. It was like moving 1,000 kilograms with little effort, and it relied on force to strike force. It revolved at will, and it was superior to Tai Chi. Although the thunder tribulation was fierce, under the rotation of the five elements reincarnation diagram, it was impenetrable. The fierce force was rotated out, and in turn, the power was reflected back. With the five elements reincarnation diagram, two circular tornadoes, one large and one small, one outside and one inside, were formed around Fang Qingshan. The one outside was naturally the thunder power tornado that the onlookers saw, and the one inside was the tornado formed by Fang Qingshan with the five elements reincarnation force. In addition to this five elements diagram, Fang Qingshan also used the all-heaven reincarnation chess. This mystique was modified by Fang Qingshan based on the immortal world Venerable Ling Long's Ling Long Grand Heavenly Heaven, imitating the all-heaven chessboard. This mystique, as Fang Qingshan comprehended the immortal chapter of the all-heaven Tao verification technique, was completely transformed into his natal mystique. After all, this mystique was originally comprehended by Fang Qingshan from the all-heaven chessboard, and now the all-heaven Tao verification technique was also compatible with the all-heaven chessboard, so this mystique naturally became his natal mystique. However, a chessboard was rotating under Fang Qingshan's feet, and his body was surrounded by hundreds of millions of stars, each of which was a world. The thunder power was first swallowed by the reincarnation ring, and then used by the five elements reincarnation diagram to fight back, rebound, and absorb, falling into the all-heaven chessboard. It was like falling into the fault of time and space, lost in the infinite void. With the blessing of the five elements reincarnation diagram and the all-heaven reincarnation chess, everything became simple. Even if there were fish that escaped the net, with Fang Qingshan's physical body, the rest of the thunder tribulation was just a tickle for him. In this way, the 2-9 Tao tribulations passed quickly. The reincarnation ring, reincarnation cone, reincarnation diagram, reincarnation chess, and so on, the mystique were also tempered one by one. Although the changes were not as great as the physical body, the power had at least increased by more than 3 levels. However, in the end, the mystique was not like the physical body. There was no qualitative breakthrough, so the next 3-9 Tao tribulations may not be used. However, fortunately, the purpose has been achieved. Next, Fang Qingshan prepared to temper the primordial spirit and the laws. As for the Dharma power, in the process of constant consumption, continuous recovery, and body tempering, the Dharma power has long been transformed. Chapter 1403. Rumble. Fang Qingshan was still not given too much time. The 3-9 Tao tribulations arrived as scheduled. This time, the first thing that changed was still the tribulation clouds above his head. The first 9 tribulation clouds were black in color. The second 9 tribulation clouds were illuminated by golden light. And now, the third 9 tribulation clouds were multicolored, splendid, and extraordinary. The power of the 3-9 Tao tribulations had a qualitative breakthrough from the foundation of the second 9 tribulation. However, fortunately, it was still an elemental lightning tribulation. Although lightning was a physical form, it did not turn into living beings, much less humans. Although many living beings were talented and were extremely powerful from birth, they still had a strong foundation. However, the human race, or rather, the human body, was still the power of heaven and earth. This was because the human body was the most perfect cultivation body. Only after taking form would it be more compatible with the Tao of heaven and earth. Putting all this aside, although the 3-9 Tao tribulations did not turn into intelligent living beings, it was still an elemental lightning tribulation. However, it was not a single elemental lightning tribulation, but a lightning tribulation of all 5 elements. Grass, wood, stone, metal, fire, ice, and water all released endless Taoist rhymes at the same time, intertwining together and falling down. For a moment, there were blazing flames that burned the sky and boiled the sea, and endless golden light that was like a sharp divine weapon that slaughtered the world. At times, there were endless mountains that pressed down, and at times, there were blue seas that swept across, and at times, there were endless vines that bound everything. Sometimes, water and fire were incompatible, and the 5 elements were mutually exclusive here. Seeing this, Fang Qingshan did not directly use his laws and primordial spirit this time. Instead, he first took out his natal treasure, the reincarnation mirror. After all, the 3-9 Tao tribulations were already comparable to Mosquito Doran's 4-9 Tao tribulations. Previously, when the second 9 Tao tribulations had been a little overwhelmed and did not successfully transform, it was almost broken by the lightning tribulation. Fang Qingshan naturally did not dare to directly use his laws and primordial spirit to fight it head-on. Otherwise, he would probably be directly destroyed before he could refine it. When that time came, he would go for wool and come home shorn. 1. There was an ancient-looking mirror that was engraved with many totem patterns. The material of the mirror was neither gold nor jade, and it was extremely heavy. On the back of the mirror, there were ancient seals of tadpole characters, dragons and birds, dragons and phoenixes. It was a mirror that was neither engraved nor painted. On the mirror, there were images of the sun and moon alternating, life and death changing, time and space intertwining, rays of light swirling around, and mystic sounds lingering in the ears. Following Fang Qingshan's urging, a beam of divine light shot into the sky. It was majestic and vast, and even the lightning that filled the sky couldn't help but stagnate. As the saying goes, the first spurt of energy, the second will weaken, and the third will be exhausted. Being swept by the mirror light, Zhang Xian's speed and momentum were immediately reduced. By the time he landed on the ground, his might had already been reduced by a notch. Again, Fang Qingshan snorted. The reincarnation mirror in his hand kept turning, and sharp escape lights shot out one after another. Again and again, the speed of the lightning was delayed and the power of the lightning was reduced. When this wave of thunder tribulation finally fell on top of Fang Qingshan's head, its power was already less than 40% of what it was at the beginning. At this time, Fang Qingshan no longer used the reincarnation mirror to attack or defend. Instead, he sacrificed the laws and his primordial spirit. After all, he had not forgotten that he not only had to go through the tribulation, but also had to use the thunder tribulation to cleanse himself. Fang Qingshan took a deep breath. With a move of his mind, his hands formed the eternal, immovable seal. The gate of heaven opened above his head, and the auspicious clouds floated. His primordial spirit flew out and visualized the great way of green lotus. In the next moment, a swaying green lotus slowly bloomed. The Tao aura of the green lotus on it was glistening and green. The flower bloomed with 33 petals, everlasting and everlasting. Its defense was unparalleled, and it was impervious to all attacks. This was not only the visualization method, but also the method of cultivating the primordial spirit. It was also an extremely powerful primordial spirit magical power. That was not all. At the same time, there seemed to be a Mount Buzhou behind Fang Qingshan's head, and the sky pillars stood erect. It was Fang Qingshan's great path, rule heavenly pillar. Black and white intertwined, and there were countless mysterious qi dynamics entwined on it. The rhythm of the Tao rang. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, white, green, black, red, and yellow. The 5 elements of 5 colors all evolved within it. Runes that looked like the reincarnation mirror and the 6 paths of reincarnation disc collided with each other, emitting an ancient reincarnation intent. Rumble. As the lightning tribulation descended, the great Tao heavenly pillar became illusory, and the primordial soul green lotus became charred and shook. The stalemate continued for a while before the lightning finally dissipated. As such, Fang Qingshan used the reincarnation mirror to weaken the power of the thunderbolts while he tempered his primordial spirit with the thunderbolts. There were no accidents. Just like how he had tempered his physical body and divine arts earlier, he managed to survive this ordeal without any mishaps. As such, the black and white divine splendor of the nomological heavenly pillar became even denser and deeper, sparkling and translucent like glass. That saved Fang Qingshan a lot of time. As for the green lotus formed by his primordial soul, not only did it recover to its original state, it became even more alluring, and the 34th grade had already sprouted. He believed that as long as Fang Qingshan successfully transcended the tribulation, it would be able to bloom into the 34th grade. After the 3-9 tribulations, the 4-9 tribulations followed closely. This time, Fang Qingshan did not think about tempering anymore. It was not that he did not want to, but it was too late. That was because the power of the thunderbolts was too strong. If he only relied on his physical body, mystical powers, and primordial soul, he would not be able to withstand a wave of thunderbolts at all. Therefore, this time, Fang Qingshan used all kinds of methods in turn. When the thunderbolts fell, the numinous treasure still went first. However, this time, it was not the reincarnation mirror acting alone, but with the support of the reincarnation law heavenly pillar. It weakened the thunderbolts first and delayed the speed of his fall. Then it was the mystical powers and combat skills that intertwined. Putting aside the intrinsic mystical powers such as the reincarnation bracelet, reincarnation all, reincarnation diagram, and reincarnation chess, he also had the stars transposition, the invincible fist, the Tao binding finger, and the Tao treading steps. One after another, they were sent out. Some were weakened, some were reflected, some were diverted, and some were, in any case, it was to weaken the thunderbolts as much as possible. If the thunderbolts were not completely eliminated in the end, he would have to rely on his physical strength to resist them. This way, although it was not as easy and casual as the first 3 tribulations, it was still orderly and carried out step by step. The emperor was not anxious, but the eunuchs were anxious. Even so, the higher-ups of the Tao sect were worried. His physical body, mystical powers, numinous treasure, and law have all been used. Although he does not seem to be in a pinch, there are still 2 tribulations left. That kid still has the timeless Arkansas, don't worry. But there are 2 tribulations, one stronger than the other. Even with the timeless arc, I'm afraid, don't be afraid. Don't we still have the Tribulation Realm's protective array? We can activate it when necessary. The Tribulation Realm's protective array. When everyone heard this, they did not know what to say. After all, the aftermath had caused him to activate it automatically. Could it really help Fang Qingshan? Don't forget that this is the Tribulation Realm. At most, we can give up the Tribulation Realm in the end. I think we should be able to turn the tide. When everyone heard this, they felt a little relieved. Although the Tribulation Realm was not bad, it was worth it for Fang Qingshan. Moreover, this was just their speculation. Perhaps they were worrying too much and had not reached that stage yet. Chapter 1404. The 1-9 Tao Tribulation was a regular lightning tribulation. It was just that it was more powerful than the ordinary 2-9 Tao tribulations, such as Yang Mei's second Tao tribulation. The second 9 Tao tribulation was an elemental lightning tribulation. It was metallic in nature, and it could transform into swords and weapons. It could take in all weapons under the heavens, and it could transform into tornadoes and vortexes that spun and sliced, sharp and cold. The 3-9 Tao tribulations were also elemental lightning tribulations. However, it was not a single elemental lightning tribulation. Instead, it was a lightning tribulation that the 5 elements were familiar with. The 5 elements reinforced and countered each other. Its power was far from what a single elemental lightning tribulation could compare with. The 4 of 9 Tao tribulations didn't change much. They were just a step up from the foundation of the 3 of 9 Tao tribulations. So far, after the entire Thunder tribulation, there were very few peak primordial chaos experts from the Tao sect who dared to pat their chests and say that they were 100% confident in dealing with the current Thunder tribulation, let alone the follow-up power. For Fang Qingshan, this wasn't enough for him to reveal his trump card. The first 3 stages of the lightning tribulation turned the tribulation into a fortuitous opportunity, using the power of the lightning to temper the body, dermic powers, primordial spirit, divine abilities, and laws. As for the 4th lightning tribulation, even though he did not dare to take the risk due to its might, he still calmly took it on. The 5th tribulation of Tao came again. This lightning tribulation had a qualitative change compared to the previous few lightning tribulations. First, there was the change in the attributes. The previous ones were all lightning of the 5 elements. When it reached level 5, it became lightning of the life and death attribute. Next was the manifestation of lightning. What appeared before were all ice-cold weapons, but now, what appeared were living creatures, such as the 3-legged underworld raven, the undying bird, the spirit tree, the withering glory tree, and so on. The 2 of them naturally couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. After all, even though the former was sharp, it seemed inflexible. The latter was a living being, and an intelligent one at that. Not to mention its might, just the agility of its attacks greatly increased the degree of danger it posed. At that moment, Fang Qingshan looked grim. He had read about the difficulty of the lightning tribulation of living beings in ancient books and scriptures. He had even personally experienced it during Mosquito Doran's lightning tribulation. He knew that its might was unfathomable. Back then, Mosquito Doran had almost suffered a great loss due to his carelessness. Naturally, Fang Qingshan did not dare to let his guard down. Just like the previous few times, Fang Qingshan was not given much time to prepare and buffer between each lightning tribulation. They all fell almost immediately. Almost at the same time, Fang Qingshan took out a gourd. However, it was black and white, and there was a bright light on it. There were densely packed runes on it, and with a slight movement, there was an endless murderous sound that shook the space. Gourd of life and death. This was a level 2 supreme treasure that had been restored to its peak. It was a level 2 supreme treasure. It was the first 2nd grade treasure that Fang Qingshan had obtained. It was all thanks to the timeless arc and the dojo on Life and Death Island that he was able to fully recover. Rise! Fang Qingshan pointed with his finger, and the gourd swallowed the sky. Seeing the vast number of living beings and thunderbolts rushing over, the life and death gourd did not refuse any of them. It repeated the old scene of the reincarnation circle. For this wave of thunderbolts, Fang Qingshan originally wanted to directly use the timeless Arkansas. However, he did not expect it to be a Tao tribulation with the attribute of life and death. This was a pleasant surprise. Directly using the life and death gourd was enough to pass smoothly. After all, the life and death gourd was not comparable to the reincarnation mirror. It was not only the difference in grade, but also the difference in the person who activated it. Although Fang Qingshan was powerful, he was obviously much worse than the driving force of the timeless Arkansas. Therefore, the power of the life and death gourd was far beyond that of the reincarnation mirror. Although the 5-9 Tao tribulation was far above the 4-9 Tao tribulation, it was not too difficult for Fang Qingshan to deal with it. I didn't expect Fang Qingshan to have such a treasure in his hands. He is really blessed. Fang Qingshan was not the only one who did not expect it. The onlookers did not expect it either. They had guessed that Fang Qingshan should have taken out the timeless Arkansas. They did not expect him to take out a gourd. However, the gourd's grade was actually as high as second-level upper grade, which was also unexpected. It should be known that second-level cardinal treasures were the standard for immortals. However, many immortals did not have them. Even if they did, they were mostly second-level lower grade. Fang Qingshan, on the other hand, had a second-level upper grade when he was at Primordial Chaos. It was really enviable. However, there were many surprises, and everyone quickly adjusted their mentality. Thus, the 5-9 Tao Tribulation was once again easily passed by Fang Qingshan. The last level of the Tao Tribulation, on the basis of evolving living beings, even evolved a humanoid Tao body living being. In this regard, Fang Qingshan had already expected it. Therefore, he took out the timeless Arkansas buzz. The timeless arc, which was almost 1,000,000 feet long, was completely golden. Countless living beings were worshipping and praying in all directions. A trace of pressure had the power to suppress time and space. Most of the Tao sect's direct disciples felt unprecedented pressure. The wolf is here. Everyone could not help but sigh in their hearts. Fang Qingshan's cultivation level and potential were not to be doubted. Just the timeless arc alone was enough to make people lose confidence. However, at this moment, Fang Qingshan did not have much time to care about the others. This was already the last wave of lightning. The first spurt of energy would weaken, and the third would be exhausted. Fang Qingshan was prepared to give it his all and end this lightning as soon as possible. Therefore, he gave his all. Great Void Divine Armor, activate. With Fang Qingshan's shout, an armor was first put on the timeless Arkansas Bell of Chaos, freeze. Then, a simple and unadorned bell flew out. Clang, clang, clang. Non-stop clang sounds could be heard. Following that, there was a mottled stone bridge. A dim oil lamp was like an assistant, accompanying the Bell of Chaos on both sides. In an instant, a wave of space-time power swept out, and the entire world became stagnant. Naturally, the lightning was no exception. Chaos Demonic Horn hit it. Then, he rode the timeless arc and stepped through the lightning tribulation. Fang Qingshan took out the Chaos Demonic Horn. A black, ferocious horn appeared in front of the timeless arc like a transparent crystal, flashing with murderous and destructive divine light. It bloomed with endless sharpness, interweaving with countless mysterious principles, and emitted a sharp that could break through everything. Rumble. However, the timeless arc was like a raging bull that had lost its mind. It charged forward regardless of everything. The great void divine armor appeared above it, and the chaos demonic horn flashed with sharpness. It was fast, accurate, and ruthless. Its power was even greater than before. Even peak Immortal Realm experts would have to retreat and not dare to face it head-on. Rumble. In an instant, countless divine lights bloomed, and endless divine sounds rang out. Countless sparks burst out, and terrifying power spread out, causing the entire Calamity Realm to begin to shatter. Good heavens! The Dowell sect people could not help but gasp. They quickly took action to stabilize the situation so that the disciples watching would not be affected. They had hoped that the Calamity Realm would be able to turn the tide at the last moment, but they did not expect that they could not even withstand the aftermath of the opponent's attack. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.